Thank you very much. Good morning. I'd like to welcome you to the Board of Deschutes County Commissioners on September 23rd, 2020. Please join us for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, I just wanted to make a couple comments this morning and like to welcome, it's not into Deschutes County, but the Gilchrist Mill has just been purchased by a company from Hewlett, Wyoming, and so it's great. That mill hopefully will be opening up and operating again November 1st. So considering what devastation we've had from our wildfires, I think it's really, really important to have a mill in our local community opening up. So I will, it's, I think they'll probably be an awesome partner in Oregon, and they do have, I believe, maybe four or five other locations in different states. So welcome to Oregon.
A couple notes about that mill. They can do large and small logs down to 6-inch diameter at the short end. And they do the white pine, which is jack pine, but also ponderosa. So they definitely have some capacity. They have it built in. They have shapers and milling machines to get trim boards, and then also a lot of doors and windows are made out of that softwood, which is the industry of Central Oregon. So if they can provide that supply, it's real good for the businesses in Bend, Redmond, and in Madras. You know, the Brightwood and all the different companies.
Right. And yes. So
I'll add one other thing. So one of the things I've really realized, being on the Forest Collaborative, but also just learning everything we learned about the forest fires and forest treatments, is the importance of having a mill in this region, because it's the only mill in this region other than Lakeview, which is, a long trip to haul logs. So when you think about the treatments they're talking about doing more of, which we're trying to do more of to avoid what happened in other areas of the state recently, having an active mill those logs can go to is really crucial. So I agree with you. Welcome to them and look forward to meeting them. So.
Yes, I actually called the company, and they were delighted to hear from us.
Good.
And looking forward to meeting us when they get here. I said, we weren't their county commissioners, but we were definitely really happy that they are in the community. I think it's really important. So
they're employees that are in our community that know how to make that mill go. So, getting them back to work with the skills that they have is very important also. And as I say, Southern Deschutes County and Bend, I know that there's employees, in Deschutes County that have had careers there, which will come back.
I know. I'm really excited.
Yes.
About that. And I know that Ed Keith, our forester, was like the bright spot of the news last week. And also had the pleasure to reacquaint with Dale Kuntz, who is actually the executive director of the Red Cross for Oregon and Southwest Washington State. He's in charge of over 3,000 volunteers. Met several of those volunteers Sunday delivering food, and they were from all over the country. They are volunteers, and they come to help those that are less fortunate. So, Dale, I'm glad you're home for a couple days, and I know he's been extremely, extremely busy serving those in need at this moment in time. So, anyway, any other comments?
Great.
Okay. All right. We had no citizen input this morning. We do have a consent agenda.
If we have somebody available for item 2, just a question about the type of infrastructure we're talking about would be the only
You
statement.
want to pull item 2, and I would like to pull item 4. I'd just like to go over that.
Sure. So I'll move consent agenda minus items 2 and 4.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? Commissioner DeBonne?
Yes.
Commissioner Henderson?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. So let's see. We need item 2 first.
So as I say, for item 2, it talks about the infrastructure
Bless you.
agreement, and I'm assuming it's the road infrastructure, but just for clarity, if you have
There's Peter.
comment on that.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the Commission. Peter Gutowski, Planning Manager. I have instantaneously texted and emailed Will Groves, who's attending a remote floodplain managers meeting, for him to get on to this meeting Sharon and her colleague handling the video conferencing, I'm sure, are monitoring to see when Will joins us. Will knows the specifics. I am just in a position here to recap what the request is. And so this is the second of two items that were pulled for consent. If it's acceptable to the chair and the commissioners, I would put us on the back burner until Will comes on board to answer those specific questions.
Sure.
Thank you, Peter. We'll do that. We're happy to do that. Realize that it's, when you have other things, other commitments. So I'm hoping Dan Emerson from Finance can just go over item number 4 for us, please.
Or Greg Munn.
Or Greg, if Greg's available.
Sure. Morning, Commissioners.
Good morning.
So essentially there were some clerical errors made during adoption of the budget, and some things that health services had budgeted from were not included. Most significantly, beginning working capital, some federal grants. And the beginning working capital would be COC COVID funds. They were advanced funds that came, I believe, in May, and they were not captured in the adopted budget. The federal funds are also COHC funds and local grants. And then probably most obviously there was a TRT. Essentially what happened was there was a misinterpretation of the board decision. We allocated TRT twice instead of allocating general fund. That's the 269 versus the 285 TRT.
So so this is item number 3 you're referring to now, 412, 140. Yeah, so I would agree that a lot of that is generally, in the past, has been from the general fund, and there was quite a discussion about transient room tax and unallocated transient room tax. So this is just getting clear on where the money, what funds are being brought from what area.
Okay.
Right. We had initially, I think it was about 400,000 in TRT to fund environmental health, but there was, like I said, a misinterpretation of the BOCC decision, and we ended up sending health services somewhere closer to 685,000 in TRT funding, and some of that should have been general fund, essentially. There was a duplication of TRT.
But, so I'm looking at, sticking on number 3, it covers a lot more things than to health. I mean, you got stuff going to all sorts of different things.
Sure.
The district attorney's office, CET group, bus pass program. I mean, so are you just transferring back money that you allocated health services? Is that what you're saying? You're taking some of the TRT back and putting general fund in?
That's correct.
With regard to number 3.
How it was with regard to number 3, correct.
The rest of that discussion is just background for us, in a way. The rest of the issue of EOCA, NACO membership, Central.
Sure. Those were clerical errors. There should have been about 108,000, I believe, budgeted for those membership fees and dues. Unfortunately, they were not. It was a clerical error. They were missed. And so at this point, we're having to make a budget adjustment to add those memberships back in. There was only 15,000 appropriated for those at the time.
So when you say, I mean, there's quite a few things on this memo. Are you saying that the budget that we saw in May, was it accurate? Or when you finalize the budget, which I don't think has been printed yet, or I don't think it has, the 21 budget, you're saying that when you were doing it, it was done wrong?
I can jump in on that real quick.
Thank you, Greg.
Yeah, so the items, if you're asking about generally these were items that would have normally been budgeted, would have normally been brought to the board during the budget process, that for some reason or another were were not. So as an example, number 3 on the staff report, a lot of the items you see there, the association, the AOC membership dues and the intergovernmental council fees, CET group bus pass program, those were all normal expenses that we run from year to year that just were erroneously omitted from the budget that was presented to you for approval.
Okay.
And I would add that those items are in what we call the non-departmental category. So it's not a hearing that you would have had during the budget hearings where you'd have gone over. You go through all the departments. This is more of a holding account where we do common things like that aren't necessarily attributable to a specific department. They weren't in the final budget document, line item document that was presented to you at the end of May.
So that's number 3. Now, number 1, I don't quite understand because you say $1 million increased to the Health Services Fund, which is our health department. $1 million, which is funded by increases in beginning working capital and local grants. Now, I can understand, I mean, how is something, you increase a budget and you say it's funded by working capital. Working capital should just be a carryover from what we had. I mean, how can you increase the working capital at a later date?
Yeah, so during the budget process, as we were moving towards budget committee, we realized that there was about $482,000 in COHC COVID money that had been awarded to the health department, but that they knew they weren't going to be able to spend in FY20. So the intention was to include that $480,000, that's a portion of the $1 million, in the beginning fund balance, beginning net working capital, and then provide the expense on the expense side so that we could spend it, have an appropriation in the current fiscal year. So that got missed. The other major item that got missed is the recognition of new grant funds from COHC in the amount of $581,000 that we knew about before budget committee, but it was missed in including it in the request for appropriation. So between the two, essentially there's about $1 million in revenue that we received either end of last fiscal year or we're going to receive this fiscal year that we don't have appropriations for.
So in other words, the first item you did, the $482,000, that was money we'd received in fiscal year 20, but it hadn't been moved over into the working capital of health services. And then the 582 we're expecting in fiscal year 21, so we put that in as a grant. Is that kind of a quick summary?
You've got it. That's exactly right.
Okay. And then number 4, reducing the $269,000 from transfers out to reserves in the transit room fact due to, so we didn't have the money, or we didn't intend to do it, but we had, or what's that one about?
Yeah, let me explain that, because that ties back to
Item 3.
Yes, it ties back to item 3. So as part of the budget committee decisions, we were tracking and put together a complete list of budget committee decisions that we went back in and made the changes in the budget that we brought back for you to adopt after budget committee. One of those items, well, I'm going to say 2 of those items, under health services, one of the items, they had 11, was to replace all general fund support for environmental health with unallocated TRT. Item number 11 was essentially the same item. So we took note of the same item twice in the conversations that we had.
When you're saying number 11, is that something we know about, or is that?
No,
something?
it's
Okay,
number 11.
then.
It would have been on the budget committee decision worksheet that we sent out at one point.
Okay.
So essentially, we doubled up on. We took notes. Notes were taken twice for the same purpose. So we doubled up on this transfer. So all we're proposing here for you today is to reverse one of those back to what the intent of the Budget Committee was.
Okay, I think I understand what you're doing. All right. I've noticed when I was doing some comparisons from previous budgets that our general fund is going down, like we're allocating more money than we used to out of that general fund over the years, yet our overall budget for the county is actually growing despite our reductions in the tax rate. So it looks to me, so I just wanted to be clear on those. Thanks.
Okay.
Well, with that discussion, I'll move approval of resolution number 2020-057 to increase appropriations in the FY 2021 budget.
I'll second it.
Any further discussion? Commissioner DeBonne?
Yes.
Commissioner Henderson?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Thank you for that clarification. I thought we needed to hear exactly what was going on.
No, I appreciate you bringing it up because it didn't make, it's hard to read the memo and understand
Right.
what had happened.
Yes.
So, and it's a couple $1 million or something.
Yes, and it's 269,000 a couple times in each way, and grants and things, and it makes sense with your explanation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks, Dan.
Is Will Groves available now? Was he able to find a way? You do? Okay, fabulous. Will, we'd just like a clarification on item number 2, the Tetherow agreement.
Here we go.
Good morning, Will.
Good morning, Commissioners. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, we can.
Excellent. I thought you might have some questions on this one, so I'm glad to answer any that you may have. For a little bit of initial context, what we have here is we have a termination of improvement agreement. So at a subdivision out at Tetherow, there was a bond given to secure infrastructure improvements, so road, utilities, things like that. The developer, in fact, constructed those required roads and sidewalks and utilities. And then one of the portions of the bond says that we're supposed to wait a year and come back and check to see that anything that didn't hold up in that first year is repaired properly. And what we have in this case is that during the construction of the dwellings in the subdivision, that there's some damage to curbs and sidewalks that need to be repaired. And so typically, in order to release the remainder of the bond, and at this point we hold 10% of the original bond as a warranty to do this repair work, typically we would want to see that repair work done. However, that repair work isn't desirable to do now by any of the parties because the construction is ongoing. So the concern is that they would, in good faith, undertake this repair work. We would release the bond, but there's still big yellow machines out there, and there still would be future repairs to do, and they want to do that all at one time. So the question is what to do about that, because we're holding some of the bond money as a warranty to see that this work's done. And the applicant in this case, in coordination with our legal department and the road department, came to a solution that's specific to Tetherow. And basically what this agreement says is it says, the county had some money that we were going to hold for warranty work, for repairs. We're willing to release that warranty work because, one, the homeowners association is willing to take on any sort of repair work that needs to be done. And two, unlike most bonded projects, this work is entirely happening to private roads. So to the extent that the repair work wasn't done in the future, that repair work would fall on private entities who have acknowledged that obligation and released us from liability as part of this termination. So this, I think of this as a successful resolution between all the parties who have all smiled and nodded and signed to it, that this is a way that we can move forward and release the remaining 10% of the bonding associated with the infrastructure in advance of the final repair work being done.
That's great. And yeah, my only question was, is this truly transportation? The roads, the curbs, and the sidewalks, and not any other, just for our information, not any other infrastructure, water, sewer, or any other type improvements. So it's truly just transportation.
That's correct.
That's what I was interested in learning.
So, Will, my question is, are the owner and the association the same entity more or less now, which is often true in developments? Or is the association really a representation of of homeowners or property owners up there so that we don't have a problem where the developer is giving away giving up an obligation because as an association, if you know what I'm saying.
Oh, that's correct. And at this point, we have enough owners in the subdivision that the homeowners association exists. So it's the developer and the owners association aren't a unitary entity. I understand your concern. And what happens typically in these developments is as they reach a certain threshold of units sold, there's provisions to cause the homeowners association to transfer to actual owners of the unit. We've reached that.
Well, that's true. What I guess I'm getting at, but what really also happens is there's a transition period where the owners association typically will get set up, but the dominant decision maker will still be the developer to a certain point, and that's been true everywhere. Aubrey Butte, Aubrey Glen, I mean, all Broken Top, everywhere. So, is this truly owners only, or is the developer the majority partner still? I guess that's, or have you thought about that or looked into that? Because it can make a difference.
Oh, certainly. I understand the concern, and I don't know that specific fact if the developer is still the majority partner in the homeowners association.
Because why I'm bringing this up is it kind of like the road district where you have disgruntled owners that feel they weren't, they aren't represented. There could be a situation like that in a resort or in a part of a resort, whatever. So I guess it's easy for us to do this. But I don't want there to be any,
Yeah, and I'm sensitive to that also. I understand what you're saying. So it sounds like there's capacity, there's the formation of the homeowners association, so there's leadership there, and that leadership has participated in these negotiations. Is that true, Will?
That's correct. So I do have, not in your packet, but I have a letter from the homeowners association on their letterhead dated May 6, 2020, from Rick Johnson, manager of the Trailhead at Tethero Owners Association, acknowledging this termination of agreement and the process proposed to deal with it.
Is acceptable.
Yes.
Yep, So that gives me comfort that they're informed about the process.
Well, maybe.
Well,
that's what I'm getting at. In a young resort, they don't have much say, and they may. So hopefully that's true. I guess I'd like to somehow verify that, but I don't know how we do that. I don't know who the person is you cited. Anyway. Is this for the entire resort, or is this just one of the communities up there? Do you know? There's quite a few little parcels of communities in Tethero, I believe. It's not like Caldera or somewhere.
Specific to the small subdivision that's opposite the clubhouse. So it's not general to the resort, it's to a specific.
To the left, maybe when you go up the hill and the clubhouse is on the right and there's some houses being built on the left.
That's correct.
That's pretty new, yeah. Well, I just have this concern. I don't know if either of you share it or we should do anything further. If it's the one I'm thinking of, you go up there and there's some new houses right at the left as you crest the hill.
yeah, I've seen the project map over the years, and there's sections and chunks of development. So this is one of them. Well, and by terminating this improvement agreement, that will release the the financial burden to the developer, which I assume is resources that can be used for this. I think of it as a punch list, so the roads, the curbs, and the sidewalks are there. So this is a punch list that's agreed upon by the parties.
Will, it actually happens that our document we're looking at does not have legal counsel's initials on it. So maybe, David Doyle, could you step in and just confirm that you did review this?
Hi, Commissioners.
Morning.
You can hear me okay. Yes, legal has reviewed this. I know we were most happy with section number 4 there, the hold harmless. It speaks to each owner and the association holding harmless. And I think, as Will indicated, these are private roads within this smaller development in the larger area up there. And so I'm not sure that there would be a scenario where the county would step in and make the repairs. But if the county did, there would be the hold harmless provision with both all of the owners and the association. So if the developer is still holding a significant ownership interest, that's who we'd be targeting first.
Well, and Dave, I agree with what you're saying, that we may be protected as the county, but I guess what I'm looking at are the property owners are protected. That's the risk that I would worry about, is them coming back saying, this thing was only a quarter built out, and the person saying they represent the association is the developer. I have no idea, but I've been involved with enough resorts and developments to know that there's this transfer goes on, and I just didn't want to leave the property owners in any kind of, and I don't know if you had a chance to look at that or anybody, because it reads like, your memo reads like they came to you or to draft this termination, and I could see why they would want, a developer would want to terminate. And it may be just they've finished the development. I actually don't know, so.
I understand what you're saying. Those are all valid observations. I do believe the developer approached Will with the idea of releasing these dollars in light of this kind of unique scenario, and the hold harmless provision was something we insisted on. Again, yeah, there could be a scenario where the county might have to step in to complete the repairs, the improvements, and then look to the owner and the association to make it whole and hold us harmless. I think that is a risk.
Yeah, I wasn't really worried about the county stepping in. I was worried about whether the property owners, the individual property owners, if there are any, have to take care of something that is left behind. That's what I'm not saying there is.
Yeah, and I haven't seen the CCRs, so I don't know if there's some additional formation documents that would speak to that or not. Will probably has a little more detail on that.
And I don't have the CCNRs in front of me. So Commissioner Henderson, I think your concern's reasonable. We don't have that information at this point to understand if, in fact, I can see that the concern here, if I can restate it, is that the developer is releasing itself from an obligation that then might fall on individual homeowners who weren't party to that decision to take on that obligation.
Yeah. I guess I'd be interested in knowing how many of the lots are individually owned, and, if there really is a transition to a homeowner-run homeowners association, because that's not how these start out. The developers keep control to a point. And sometimes it's quite a ways out before the owners really are in charge of the policies. So I guess that's my concern. I guess I'd like to see, I don't know if there's something pressing this week, but maybe we could just see a map of this development, or there's a little bit, it's easy to research this. Somebody would be able to tell us, I suppose. Probably the developer would tell you how many lots are owned, what makes up the homeowners association now.
Certainly, and I was looking at that. If you saw my turning my head the other way, I've got another screen up here taking a look at that. It looks like that somewhat less than 50% are owned by other entities other than what the developer, which was VRE Tract Y LLC. So it looks like they still own the majority of the lots out there.
Well, I'd support staying by for a week and doing our homework on this. Just to make sure that the private interests that are buying into that are comfortable with the transition here. And, maybe the roads are all complete. As I say, my assumption, it's just assumption, is that, once you pave, you probably pave the whole thing, and then curbs, sidewalks. This is damage to those during construction and a punch list. It could be answered pretty quick. We just don't have it here today.
Great.
I'd like to do that. Yeah, I'd like that also.
So we seem consistent in this, Will, so perhaps we could get more information and bring it back next week, if that's possible?
Yeah, certainly. I think this is a great question. I'll be happy to get that information and bring it back to you next week. Thanks for your level of attention to this, and I'll work with the parties to make sure that this concern is adequately addressed.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now back to the floodplain. Okay. All right, so now we're at item number 7, the Urban Renewal District in South Redmond, US 97. Mr. Anderson.
Thank you, Commissioners. So I'm just going to introduce this. I believe we have Megan Gassner from the City of Redmond who's going to make a formal presentation. There may be other folks from the city as well that will take part, but I understand that in late August, was out that week, but that you had an informal presentation on the sort of the main characteristics of the proposed urban renewal district in the southern portion of Redmond, centered around Highway 97, as well as the large lot industrial land south of the fairgrounds. So this is, I guess, if you will, the formal presentation from the city on what that proposed urban renewal district looks like, including term, project list, those that would be done as part of the improvements necessary to correct blighted conditions within that portion of the city, as well as the potential impacts financially on the 4 county service districts that are represented within that proposed area, which is Deschutes County, 911, countywide law enforcement, and Extension 4H. So with that, unless there's any questions for me, I will turn it over to Megan. It looks like also we've got Keith Witkowski, the city manager, and Jason, the finance director. So take it away.
Great, Megan. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you very much for having us. Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the Commission. Yeah, we really appreciate the time to be back in front of you to discuss the proposed South Redmond US 97 Urban Renewal District in a little more depth with you all. So as Tom mentioned, my name is Megan Gassner. I am the Urban Renewal Program Analyst with the City of Redmond here. I am here today with Jason Neff, our CFO. Of course, you all know Keith, our City Manager. And additionally, we have Chief Ken Kimna and Chief Jeff Poehler from Redmond Fire and Rescue to essentially address some of the larger regional public safety needs and benefits of this district. So my role today is really to just guide you through this presentation. However, we can all answer any questions you might have as we go forward. At our initial presentation to you in early July, you had specific questions that we'll be answering as the presentation unfolds. Specifically, you wanted to know the financial impacts to each of the 4 county taxing districts, the total amount of the foregone revenue that's projected. You also asked about the growth rate for Redmond's prior and current urban renewal districts, and also when we would expect the corridor plan, that's kind of the impetus for this district, to actually go to the Oregon Transportation Commission. So we plan to address all those questions as we go through this discussion. What I want to emphasize from the outset is that we know the financial impact of this project to the county and to our other taxing district partners is not insignificant. We're certainly not here to sugarcoat that. What we hope to impress upon you, though, is that regardless of the potential financial benefit you'll see 25, 30 years down the road, we do feel that the projects and the priorities in this urban renewal plan really provide regional solutions that address regional concerns related to safety, mobility, and development of some significant job and employment land that can serve the entire county in the very near future. The benefits of this district in those regards will certainly be realized much sooner than 30 years out. So today what we want to do is just quickly walk you through a review of the project, the purpose of the district and its financial impacts, and then have plenty of time for your feedback and questions. So just as a quick refresher, here is a visual of the proposed boundary. The district extends from Veterans Way to the north down to the U Avenue Airport Way to the south, and east-west from the railroad tracks to Canal Boulevard. The plan also includes the recently annexed South Redmond tract property that is just south of the fairgrounds. So this is also all detailed in the plan and report that you've hopefully had an opportunity to review. But really why we're proposing this new district essentially boils down to the following 3 priorities. The first is leverage for state and federal funding that we can't otherwise obtain through other funding avenues. For example, we will be applying for a build grant, I believe in 2022. But in order to be considered for that, we really need to show that we're going to be able to produce some significant matching funds. Without the tax increment financing, we just wouldn't have the funding to dedicate to that. The second priority is infrastructure. We have about 1,000 acres of job and employment land where there is currently no infrastructure, gas, water, sewer, roads currently in place. And without that, that acreage will continue to sit empty and unused instead of being put to good use. And then finally, and most importantly, our third priority is really just the safety of the South Highway 97 corridor. Between the improvements to 97 and the addition of a much-needed fire station in that area, the projects in this plan really address many of those concerns that are happening right now. So to address those priorities, we do need to implement the South Highway 97 corridor plan, which is really the impetus for this district. The corridor plan was the result of a decade's worth of research, outreach, studies, and planning, all to address the needs along Highway 97. Specifically, we're looking at major improvements to the safety and mobility of the South Highway 97 corridor, which is, of course, a major regional thoroughfare that will benefit not just Redmond residents, but the county resident base as a whole, as well as the ever-increasing tourist traffic we have moving through that area. So at this point, just to be able to discuss that in more depth, I'd like to hand the presentation over to Chief Poehler and Chief Kemna to discuss the safety concerns in more depth and what they've observed in their field.
Good morning, Commissioners. Thank you, Megan. Ken Kemna, Fire Chief, Redmond Fire and Rescue. I'm going to do just a little quick lead-in, cover some of the information we covered before, and then turn it over to Chief Poehler to talk a little bit more about the actual details and some of the specifics of the area. The one thing that I wanted to sort of recap on was the necessity for putting a fire station in the south end of Redmond Fire and Rescue's response area. As you know, Redmond Fire and Rescue is a district. We're no longer a city agency, so we cover a fairly significant amount of area, much larger actually than the city of Redmond, about 294 square miles, and much of that is in the county area. And so serving the south end of Redmond is really key for us. It's where the lion's share of the calls that we run are. As the city of Redmond continues to develop and expand south, this continues to be an area of higher call volume. Obviously, 97 is, as we all know, is a significant hazard for us. We respond to the byway, both north and south, quite a bit. But this area is a particular concern for us. Ever since my arrival here in Redmond, a fire station in the south end of Redmond has been something we've been discussing. And we know that this is something we're going to absolutely have to do one way or another. This opportunity presents the perfect time to really consider it before the development, before the infrastructure, so that we can actually have that fire station in place. One of the things, and I may have said this before, I apologize, it's incredibly difficult to put a fire station in once the community has fully developed. One, it's not always the kind of thing somebody wants next to them, but that's just until you put one in, and then they don't want it to ever leave. So it's a very important part of the community, and providing additional safety in the south end of Redmond is absolutely critical for us. I'm happy to answer any questions, but for the moment, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Deputy Chief Poehler. He can talk a little bit more specifically about the impact of the area and the need for increased safety in the station. Chief?
Good morning, Commissioners. One of the biggest parts about putting a fire station in the south end of the district here is it will allow us to decrease our response times. Right now, a good portion of the population of Redmond's in that southwest district where we respond to. Putting a station there, it will become our busiest station on its first day in service. We have a lot of care facilities that respond to there. Not only would this fire station have fire apparatus, but it would also have an ambulance in this fire station also. So the medical responses out of that station will greatly reduce our response times. Currently, our closest fire stations from downtown Redmond. To get to the southern part, down towards like Ridgeview High School, which is right on the boundary of the city and the district and the county, it can sometimes be anywhere from 8 to 10 minute response times. So being able to put a station in that south district will allow us to reduce those response times down to where they should be, around 6 minutes. Some of the other benefits of having that station in that end of the district will allow us to be assessed and reduce the insurance rates for the homeowners in that area. So by reducing that, they'll be able to in the future see reduced costs on the premiums for homeowners, and that will especially come into play for the county in the south there, where response times are longer. For personnel going into this station, currently today we already have the ambulance crew available for the station when it is built. So that part is already prepared. We're going to have to do a little more work for the firefighters themselves, that personnel, and preparing for that in the future, but that would also be in the plan. Currently, we're running about 6,000 calls a year, and a majority of those, like I said, go to that south end of the district, and 75% of those calls are EMS related. So,
I have a question. How much will a new fire station like this cost, and would this, as part of the purpose of the urban renewal district, would it fund all of the fire station and the needed parts to that, or is it just part of it, or how does that work?
Well,
Go ahead.
Megan.
Okay, I was going to say I can go ahead and jump in on that part of that briefly. Chief Kemna could probably speak to the actual cost of the fire station. But the role of urban renewal would be more to assist with the gap financing to help make that occur. It wouldn't be for the purchase of land or the staffing of it, but for the brick and mortar. Chief Kemna, I'll let you take over on the general cost of that.
Absolutely. Commissioner Henderson, excellent question. No, $4 million isn't even going to get us close to the completed project. At this point, we don't even have a site located. This was really just an opportunity to take advantage of the timing to be able to put a fire station in somewhere in the area that we know that it needs to go, and really just to start that process now. There's going to be a significant amount of investment on the part of Redmond Fire and Rescue. We've already looked at financing options for ourselves in the future. I would say at a minimum, we're looking at $8 to $10 million for a fire station. And I think really the thing to consider here is when we build fire stations, we try to build them for the future and not for the present. And for the future, I think we really need to look at being able to co-locate multiple pieces of equipment and accommodate multiple crews. The other thing, and this is really, I think, a really critical point, is that we really think more regionally now than we ever have. In fact, I would say the vast majority of conversations that I have with my colleagues about this project are not necessarily just about the value of that fire station that it adds to Redmond Fire and Rescue's service area, but the position that it puts us into assist with other agencies in responding mutual aid into other jurisdictions. We try and think of the entire county as our responsibility, not just our own individual service area. So the placement of the fire station in that location, though it will be a significant investment for Redmond Fire and Rescue, is really going to be an investment in the entire county's response model and deployment of resources.
Yeah, I get that. I mean, you see it in all these fires, and we have great cooperation between the different districts, et cetera. I was really mostly, and I see the need you have in Redmond, and it makes sense to me. I was just curious kind of how much the Urban Renewal District can help with that and the funding from this. It sounds like there's some limitation on what it can go towards. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, that is true. But it is an excellent start for us. Like I said, we've been looking at opportunities for building fire stations. When we went out with the local option levy just this past election cycle, we already knew that we would be talking about a future bond measure likely to continue to fund the purchase of equipment and additional facilities. And this would certainly fall within that category as well.
Good. Okay. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Chief Kemna and Chief Poehler. I also wanted to mention briefly too that investing in these underdeveloped areas that we have, such as the South Redmond Tract area, south of the fairgrounds, would have a significant positive impact on the job growth at multiple wage levels. And we would expect that those jobs would provide work to residents throughout the whole county, not just within Redmond. So just a refresher, I know this was in the plan that you were able to review, but really the main focus here is implementation of this concept design for the Highway 97 corridor to improve the safety and accessibility through there. The project elements include a raised center median, which will eliminate those center lane left turn conflicts, some new signalized intersections and other access treatments that will really help to distribute the flow of traffic and provide better east-west alternative access points to help ease congestion through there. The modeling shows that this will result in lower travel time through the corridor, both north and south, as compared to leaving it as is. Additional connections to South Canal also allow the highway and South Canal to work together to improve access and capacity and really links that residential and commercial areas. Additionally, we really have a critical timing piece here to the implementation of this district in order to be responsive to ODOT's road repair timeframe. This is a cooperative project with ODOT in that they're required to repave this section of 97 within the next 3 to 5 years. What the projects we have in this plan resolve their pavement and accessibility issues, while also improving the corridor for travelers and businesses with some safer access and really just some improved aesthetics through there. So ODOT's aware that we are proposing this new district, and they are willing to partner with us in implementing the safety improvement projects if we're also able to produce our share of the funding through tax increment financing. And to answer one of your questions from our last presentation in July, this corridor plan is expected to go to OTC in early 2021, I believe. And just briefly, the South Redmond tract property, the large lot industrial area just directly south of the fairgrounds, is expected to accommodate up to 3 million square feet of new development. The area is planned for 50 to 200 acre industrial sites with about 2 to 10 employees per acre. So through the development of infrastructure and the creation of some various developer and business incentive programs, it's really intended to appeal to technology and other light industrial low impact uses that do require those large parcels of land. We've been hearing from our colleagues with Ready that there are not many opportunities in the state or in the Pacific Northwest to find those large tracts that are available for this purpose. The primary investments for the urban renewal funding will occur in the following areas: the implementation of the corridor plan, which is estimated to cost a total of about $50 to $70 million. The utilities and infrastructure for both the corridor and the South Redmond tract properties, the additional fire station, and then the business and property development incentive programs. So moving to the financial considerations for this project, when we're looking at the total levy rates for all of the overlapping taxing district partners, the county taxing districts all rolled up account for a little over 17% of the total taxing district rates, so certainly not an insignificant portion of that. County is at about 8%, law enforcement's at 7%, I believe 911's at 2.3%, and 4-H is at about like 0.1, 0.2, right around there. So I'm going to hand this over to Jason in a moment to kind of walk you through this in more depth and discuss the financial impacts and with a little more detail, as he is much more adept at it than I am. But essentially what you're looking at here is the potential financial impact and benefit to the county taxing entities. So column 2, that first column with the figures, hopefully you can see it okay. And I'll make sure to send this PowerPoint to Tom to distribute to you guys. Column 2 does represent what each entity currently receives annually in property tax revenue. So you're looking at a total all rolled up of about a little shy of $400,000 annually. Column 3 is what the foregone revenue would be over the life of the district, which is going to be about 25 years. So again, all rolled up, you're looking at about $10.4 million. Column 4 represents the projected revenues after 25 years if the urban renewal district was not implemented. altogether, that's about $900,000. So compared to the current annual increase of $400,000, we're projecting about a $500,000 increase. However,
Megan?
oh, yes.
I have a question. This is Commissioner Adair. Our front page of our packet said the total was going to be 9.3 million, and you're saying now it's 10.4. I'm just wondering, over 25 years? We'll have to see the information that you have. Our packet is a bit different with the documentation behind it.
Gotcha. Thank you for letting me know that. And I think Jason could probably answer that best. That's most likely due to we've done some updated modeling, and some of those numbers and the projected revenues did change with that modeling. We just wanted to make sure what we were presenting to you today was our most accurate information that we had.
I had kind of a similar question. Our packet also says designed to fund 116 million in projects, but it looked like up there I think the number was 71 million or something on a earlier slide, so that must be different.
Well,
go ahead.
No, our packet on page 57 says the urban renewal funding is 68 million with the future cost of 84 million. That's on 57, so, okay, thank you. Oh, we have your packet now. This may help.
Yeah, and I think most likely the difference in those numbers, what you're looking at is the lower number is the project cost, and what was on that prior slide, those are the projected costs of the projects itself. The total cost of, which I believe was 116 million, that would include staffing, debt service, everything else that wasn't actually a project cost, but certainly I know Jason will be able to clarify that a bit more. So before I do kick it over to him, I did want to point out too, though, that if the urban renewal district was to be implemented, rather than the $900,000 projected tax revenue, you're looking at probably closer to about 2.4 million. So with that, I will hand this over to Jason to help clarify some of those points.
Yeah, thanks, Megan, and good morning, County Commissioners. Jason Neff, City's Chief Financial Officer. So I think Megan did a pretty nice job of kind of setting it up, but I'll just clarify a few things. That second column, what you're receiving annually, that essentially will stay that way. That's the frozen amount. The foregone revenue, the assumption there is you get the 3% by state law increase in assessed value. Well, there's an additional 1% assumed there, so for a total of 4%. And where you get the difference between those latter two columns is the sunset without UR urban renewal. That's a 1% above 3%, so total 4%, and then the urban renewal is assumed to grow it at around 7.5%, which is pretty consistent with how our downtown's growing. I think there's potential with the vacant land for it to grow faster. So the payback you see down below of 7 is essentially that difference between the 900,000 and the 2.4 million divided by the foregone revenue. I think the reference to the foregone revenue, I'd have to go back and look for sure, but different iterations of the report, we did get more conservative on our borrowing rate assumption. I think it was initially at 3%, and now we're at 3.5%. I know interest rates are even lower than that, but over the long haul, it's very difficult to assume a rate. So that's probably why you're seeing an additional $1 million there of foregone revenue. And with that, I can take questions as well. Thank you.
Well, I don't know if you're the right one to ask this to, but so you've got projects of a certain amount, like I don't know, there's 60 or 70 million, but the total cost of everything is 116. So it's like almost $50 million of things that aren't projects. That seems like a lot of miscellaneous to me, but maybe it's interesting they're not named projects, because like the fire station's only 4 of it. Seems like 50 million is, I'm just kind of curious how that gets spread around.
And Megan, feel free to chime in. I think the 116 probably refers to like the total cost of all the projects with outside funding. I'm trying to find that in the report exactly, but the 70 refers to the actually what the district would be putting in.
So you're saying the gap is only between the 61 and 70? It's only 9 million or something?
Yeah, so the,
okay.
The 116 would include leveraging those state and federal resources.
Okay, so it's not private money, it's all, would be other government entities?
Jason, that's on page 58 of the report that you sent us, is where that 116 comes from.
Page 58.
Or actually, it's Commissioner Packet, page 58 is page 25 of the actual report.
Okay, thank you, Tom.
So in a way, this is kind of a disconnect between, we don't really know how the urban renewal or the TIF funding, which, I guess it shows what they are, but it doesn't show amounts.
Yeah, so on page 25, as Tom mentioned, you can see the ODOT funding, kind of the second line of that table of 26 million. That's the big one you'll see in there. And then there's a little bit of fire district funding, 4.5 for the TIF, and then $1.5 million from the fire district. Probably more than that based on what the chief was saying. But.
And I know you had been meeting in Washington, and I realize the infra grant isn't really going anywhere at this moment in time from the federal government. But what if that happens next year? Is there more that we would be doing, or would the federal government pick up some of these costs?
And I can jump in to answer that. Yeah, if that occurred, that would obviously be that would be really great. And I think what we would most likely do is look at making an amendment to our plan to reduce the max indebtedness appropriately based on whatever that came in at to help fund those projects.
Well, I know in all my documents, all my surveys for ODOT, I keep reminding them that we are the fastest growing area of Oregon. And we definitely could use more, ODOT allocation of their resources to our community. So it would be nice if they would listen.
Megan, you're on mute.
Sorry about that. Pushed the wrong button again. No, I wanted to add what Commissioner Adair had to say there. That yes, if those funds came in, that would be phenomenal. But oftentimes, while you're waiting to find out about that, what comes in is it's never guaranteed. It's rarely what we need, and at the time that we need it. So by implementing this TIF district, we can really move the needle a lot faster to be more responsive to potential industrial manufacturing firms that are really interested in our region. This is I think it's a tool that's been proven to be able to bring that infrastructure and jobs to the region as a whole. And so we just want to be able to move as quickly as possible rather than, playing the waiting game with ODOT and the federal government.
Yes, it is a waiting game, isn't it?
It is.
Who does well with waiting games?
Okay, well, I'll go ahead and move us forward, and we can certainly come back to this slide as needed to discuss the financials in more depth if needed later on. At our prior presentation, you asked about the metrics for our other urban renewal districts. We've had a great deal of success with our prior districts, specifically the airport, South Airport Urban Renewal District. It actually grew to a rate that was 87 times over where it started, from an assessed value base of $725,000 to when it closed to $63 million. It closed in 2010 and has actually been returning about $74,000 a year. Similarly, our downtown district that is currently in place has a growth factor of about 4 times where it started. It started with an assessed value of $72 million, and if it closed today, would have an assessed value of $288 million, or a growth rate of about 4 times where it started. Since its implementation, it's averaged about $5 of private investment for every $1 of urban renewal funding that was invested. And for this district, for our US 97 district, we're conservatively projecting that it will have a growth rate of about 6 times its current rate. So going forward, we will be looking for recommendations and formal actions from our taxing district partners to arrive around October 15th, October 20th. City Council will hold their public hearing on this on October 27th, and then we're tentatively looking at a plan adoption decision at Council's November 10th meeting. So with that, if you have any additional questions, anything we can clarify, we are more than happy to do so.
So Megan, one question I have, the South industrial property part of it is kind of a different, and they're all connected and they're all in the same region, but kind of a different proposal than the transportation corridor, et cetera, and things like the fire station, et cetera. What do you do to, and it's a little bit different than what it's different than your downtown project. What do you do to avoid the kinds of problems that they've had in Bend, which is where I live, with the Juniper Ridge project taking kind of 20 years and not much happening? How does the urban renewal district and the TIF funding help with that? Or what are your kind of plans on that?
That's a really great question, and one that we have been having a lot of discussions about with our colleagues over at Ready. Just really making sure that we are in communication with them frequently about who is interested in these tracts of land, what kind of infrastructure they'll be needing. We don't want to put in piping that ends up being either not enough or too much. So, those conversations have been ongoing for quite a while. I think one thing that we also do well as a matter of course is that we very much measure how our districts are going on a very frequent basis. We have our annual review of, what are the metrics that we're measuring ourselves against, and where are we with that? If we're not meeting those metrics, what do we need to do? What do we need to adjust? So that certainly wouldn't change for this district.
And Commissioner, I'll answer that too a little bit from experience with urban renewal in Portland. What I saw with Bend, what we want to avoid is spending a bunch of money on infrastructure and then hoping we find tenants. And so we will not be doing that with the industrial properties south of the fairgrounds. We'll work directly with developers and development agreements and make investments as the jobs come in.
Are there some models, Keith, of Portland areas that was how they did it there? That when you say comparing that, because I know.
Yeah, it's one of the mistakes I think that happens in urban renewal areas where the government or the urban renewal agency is so eager to get the bird in the hand that they put a bunch of money in hoping they'll find someone rather than waiting and making the investments as the jobs are leveraged.
Okay, makes sense.
Thank you for the presentation. Urban renewal is always hard from my point of view because it's redistributing the voted on tax rates that are going to other projects. So, I mean, that's just, as a county commissioner, and this is how we're going to take some of your money and spend it. It just always sounds like that, so it is what it is. You have the authority to do this. Very excited about the transportation investments and large lot industrial. That's been a big effort by many partners in Central Oregon. In fact, just getting the land use in place at the state level to authorize that. So there's a long history on that. Obviously, the fairgrounds is part of that, and there's other, other activities around Redmond. And congratulations on the job creation. That's the big picture. The fire district is another one of those things. It looks like it's an outlier just a little bit, as in, man, it's great to be able to say we have this chunk of money, but when I see it as a county commissioner, it's taking away from a sheriff's permanent rate. It's just shaving off a little bit from the Deschutes County operations rate, and it is what it is. That's exactly what I see. That's how it comes across. One of the wishes I would have is that the voters, the citizens, understand this, because it's so easy to sell it as, here's some resources and we're going to do great investments. And the projects are wonderful. There's no downside to the projects. But as I say, the voters don't probably digest it as much. The average voter thinking, okay, when you look at your tax bill, all these line items, but then some of those are just diminished by these urban renewal footprints in our community. So, as I say, I mean, I'm kind of lukewarm on that hand, but for Redmond, it's exciting, seeing those investments possible, and the plan does hang together well. So, that's just the way I conclude it.
Thank you, Commissioner DeBone. Yeah, I really appreciate that, and certainly our messaging to our taxpayers in the county is important to us. We want to make sure that that we get across what this project's about, and and that we're forthright and honest about what those impacts look like. So that's
and it sounds like the messaging is very businesslike, and Keith, you're setting the tone very well on the big picture here and how the investments will happen. And there is a history in Redmond of the investments, and they definitely are paying off.
So Megan, I have a question. I read in our original paperwork that it was 28,000 trips, daily trips between Bend and Redmond. And I know COVID was impactful, but I've been on 97 lately, and it looks like, do you have any idea what that number really is, 2020, September?
I believe the most recent number we had was from 2018. I can certainly try to find out if we have a more recent traffic count than that.
Okay, I think the document in here was a little bit older than that. And then,
okay.
I'm just curious. I look at the crashes on 97. What is it, 43 a year? And I know it went up really a lot when the road outside of Safeway was closed. Canal to get out. That was a real problem there. But are we taking out all those lights? Does ODOT want to take out all those 4 lights in that area?
We would actually be adding in 3 intersections with lights to help so that traffic doesn't get so staggered and people are making those really, rather dangerous movements through there. And it's counterintuitive, but actually adding in those signalized intersections actually helps traffic get through at a quicker pace than now.
So ODOT will actually allow you to add lights then?
Okay. It'll be new with those new east-west crossings that we're proposing, that it would be there.
Okay, because they always tell us that lights are very dangerous, and there are all these, rear-end accidents and everything. So, okay. But, it seems like in this area, we really do need lights.
Are you saying you want roundabouts at all those intersections?
No, I know. I'm not saying roundabouts. No, I'm just saying, okay, then you don't have to take them out, but you can actually add 3. So that's definitely a different story.
So one of the comments that I had was that I agree with a lot of what Commissioner DeBone said about the concept. We've actually reduced our tax rate twice in the county in the last 4 years. And so every time we defer money or income or whatever revenue to our government agency to another government or other projects that really aren't county projects, it makes it harder for us to do things for our taxpayers. So I agree with the kind of the issue of informing the public, and maybe at some point they should approve projects like this, just like they approve a bond, because really we're redirecting tax dollars basically with these projects. That said, you all didn't get to have the benefit of our discussions with the Benz Urban Renewal District, and I think some of the concerns we had with that, and we ultimately didn't support it because one of the couple of things, principles I think we believed in was, one, that spending the money on real infrastructure as opposed to things that benefit developers is important to us, and less of the projects that really don't benefit a lot of people but make it, I don't know, some people just like it. I mean, kind of that are advocated by certain groups or whatever. But I think we were concerned with just the cost and what the plan was. I think and we also said in that we were, I suppose, more impressed with what you'd been able to accomplish in the past in Redmond, which has really been, from my perspective, really good. So that gives a good track record. So
definitely your track record is to be commended. I really appreciate the decisions you've made and the follow through. It just seems like this is just the logical step for Redmond. I'm in Redmond a lot, and I see what's happening, and definitely 97 in that area for your community should be, it would be really nice for it to be upgraded. The family wage jobs that you've brought into Central Oregon have been so commended. So I really appreciate all the work you've done for your proposal.
So what's our next step?
Commissioners, you have a couple of choices. You can, typically, we would allow you time to sort of process the information that you've heard today, think about it, review the material once more, and then we'd schedule at a later time a discussion where you can decide, what, if any, formal comments that you'd like to make in response to the Redmond's request for comments. And that could be in the form of a resolution, a letter, or anything else. We do have tentatively a joint meeting scheduled with the Redmond Council prior to the due date of the comments. So
October 15th is the due date. So
yeah, and I think the week before that is tentatively when our joint meeting is scheduled. But it's entirely up to you on whether you'd like to do that before then. So
that's not very far.
Yeah.
No. Maybe we could come back next week if our Wednesday looks good. Is that too soon?
Maybe we could present it to them when we have our joint meeting, or what
right.
our thinking is, or something.
Okay.
So I think next week would be excellent.
Somewhere I read here that the city was supposed to take make consideration of what we say, but I don't.
Yeah, so there's 3 ways it goes.
We'll see.
Either we send is it a resolution? Is that the?
Yes.
That's what we did with Ben, but you're not bound by that mechanism. But that certainly kind of is a good format to lay out your thoughts in terms of the whereases and your conclusion. So we can start there if that makes sense.
Well, there's kind of 3 ways to go. They're either a statement in support, a statement in opposition, or no comment. It's kind of where we could go with this. So.
A, B, or C.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Commissioners, I did get a text just now from Keith. It vibrated twice as hard.
Yes, Keith.
That we had actually canceled the joint meeting. Based on the fact that we were going to have this discussion today.
Yep, okay.
Urban renewal was going to be
kind of the content for it. Understood.
Okay, well then we can do our resolution and send it to him then.
Okay.
Great. Thank you, Keith, for letting us know.
Thank you.
No, thank you, everyone, today for joining us. Appreciate what you do in Redmond, and I'm so glad you're part of our county. So thank you.
Thank you all very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I believe we have Whitney for the Economic Development Loan Program.
Good morning, Commissioners. For the record, Whitney Hale, Director of Communications. This morning we have a number of representatives from EDCO joining us to talk about the Economic Development Loan Program. For folks who might be watching the meeting and aren't familiar with that program, the Economic Development Forgivable Loan Program was initiated to encourage and assist community companies seeking to relocate and create new jobs within the county. To receive a loan, companies must agree to create a specific number of jobs within a defined period and then maintain that level of employment for an additional set period of time. So today, Commissioners, we have Roger Lee, CEO of EDCO, joining us, along with Don Mill, Bend Area Director, and Bill Kuhn with First Interstate Bank, who serves on the Due Diligence Committee for vetting applications for this program. And we're going to discuss repayment of 3 Economic Development Loan Program awards, as well as have a broader conversation about the interest rate that has been used in the past when these loans are created. So I will turn things over to Don and to Roger to kind of walk through the specifics as it relates to the 3 companies that we'll be discussing today. So we'll go ahead and I can turn the mic over so we've got 3 spots. Yeah.
Okay, so we have to clean this one first. We wouldn't want you to.
Keeping our protocols up.
Yes, we have to pay attention to.
Just in case.
Roger Lee, go for the record. I did want to just mention that on your previous agenda item, that from our perspective, and I would say from a statewide perspective, that those lands, industrial lands on the south end of Redmond, are really quite unique in the state. And when we have inquiries coming in, oftentimes from Business Oregon as kind of a conduit for those, Redmond is among, I'm going to say, 3 or 4 other places in the state where companies can actually have those larger tracts of land near transportation, near infrastructure, et cetera. So it does represent not just, I think, a unique thing for our region, but a unique thing for the state, which that urban renewal, however your deliberations go on that, would obviously benefit.
Thank you, Roger, for those comments.
And I'm going to really turn this over to Don. Don's done most of the legwork and followed with companies and conversations with the Due Diligence Committee, and we're very happy to have Bill Kuhn from First Interstate Bill join us today to kind of give his perspective on this as well. On our conversations, and I'll give it to Don. With Palm, it was just maybe there was some concern on the commissioner's part as far as why are we seeing these, kind of a group of these companies converting, and are these COVID related, et cetera. So Don will get into details of that, but we're certainly ready to address those.
Great, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Good morning, Commissioner Adair, Commissioner Henderson, Commissioner DeBone. Thanks for letting us be on your calendar today to talk about this. And we're going to just address 2 things, as Whitney mentioned, the conversion to specific note terms for 3 existing Deschutes County Economic Development Loan Program loans, otherwise known as Forgivable Loan Program. It's kind of a lot of words, but we'll shorten it a bit. And talk about the interest rate, as she mentioned, in 2 ways. We're going to talk about it in terms of specific rates for these conversions and then overall for the total program. As Roger mentioned, I'm Don Mill. I'm the new Bend Area Director, and Bill and Roger. I thought I'd do a real quick refresher on the program, just in case we're all squared away there. It's a program to support balanced economic growth in Deschutes County through the incenting middle-income jobs. Generally the loans are between $1,000 and $2,000. The maximum grant is $2,000 per employee, and they're converted to grants if the employment targets are achieved. Pretty simple targets. It must be increase of at least 5 jobs, and that must be maintained for a year. The historical program, the results of the program have been pretty solid. We've had 38 companies participate in the program since it was started in late 2010. So in those 10 years, those jobs, those companies, 38 companies, have committed to 800 new jobs, and the actual jobs delivered by those companies during that 1-year growth period has been nearly double that. About $1.1 million has been awarded in this program over that 10 years. And the actual job creation for these 38 companies is actually even higher today, as that measurement period ended when their loan was converted to a grant. And so for some of those cases, it was nearly 10 years ago. So I can't tell you what the exact job growth is today on that, but it's significantly higher than the 2X that they committed to. There have been only $9,000 in total write-offs from the program since its inception, so it's less than 1%. And believe that the reason for that, what I consider pretty positive results, is that there's two features of the program that make it solid. One is it's there to help companies with specific financial issues with respect to growth or relocation, or to tip relocation decisions to Deschutes County. And also, it has a relatively rigorous due diligence process involving analytical requests, information, so on, by bankers, real estate brokers, CPA, so a pretty balanced group of folks. And by my review of the documents in these programs that preceded me, it seems pretty thorough. There have been some companies that have repaid the loans over the 10 years, but all of that capital has been redeployed with interest to fund future additional companies with growth plans. Currently, there are 3 active programs, just kind of an update. We have 2 in Bend and 1 in Redmond. All 3 of those will be completed by around the end of this calendar year, so those will get resolved next year. And as far as I know, they're all on good footing. We have 4 programs that are in the queue. John Stark, the area director in Redmond, has 2 kind of in the application process, and I also have 2 here in Bend. And I think if they go forward, if they qualify, they pass their due diligence efforts, you'll probably see those in the next few weeks, and I'll be here again for that. So overall, my conclusion looking at the Forgivable Loan Program, has been a great tool for us to help spur economic development, to help those local trade sector companies grow, and to entice new trade sector companies to come here. So we're going to talk about 3, in today's proposal, we're going to talk about these 3 companies, each of which triggered noncompliance with the predetermined employment levels. The proposals we make today are the same for all 3, except with one exception. One of the companies would prefer to just pay off their loan today, and it sounds like a good idea. None of these, the causes for this failure to meet the employment targets, is not COVID related. They all preceded COVID, and they're all company-specific drivers, and they're not related. And I'll share with you the details that we have on that and take your questions on it. And in talking with the companies, trying to facilitate them being successful, I determined that there wasn't really a likelihood that those employment levels could be achieved in the short term, so we're not going forward. As Whitney also mentioned, we're talking about an increase in the interest rate. The current standard loan program and the loan programs for each of these companies in force shows an 8% interest rate. And so we'd like to propose an update to that to address the current financing market, the purpose of the incentive program, and balance the risk. The September 17th letter that we provided you with the background of this information included a 3% rate proposal. Subsequently, we've had discussions with the due diligence committee, and so we've considered, and we can talk about that today, about a rate in the more of the 4 or 5% range, which might be prudent today. I've discussed these proposals with the companies, including the 3% rate. Just as a heads up, are you ready to sign up and let's go? And they're all, certainly no counters to that. So that's let's talk about specifics on the companies, and we'll be relatively brief. The first one I'll talk about is Grace Biolabs. It was funded in mid-2018 for $48,000. They were to add 24 jobs, and that was to have been completed by April of this year. The 1-year measurement period would have been ending April of 20. And the average employment for that wage for that group of additional employees was about $41,000. In I'm this is probably well known. It's new to me because I'm relatively new in the position, but in Q3 of 2019, Grace Biolabs lost their largest customer, accounted for more than half of their revenues, about 60%, and it caused them to have a fairly substantial layoff. Now, they did meet the requirement, and they exceeded it by a fair amount in their first 2 quarters, but today, since they're at 35, and they were
I want to say
be at
something
65.
about them, though. They actually did hand sanitizer, I believe, for St. Charles, and they had extra hand sanitizers. I got a personal call on it, and I noticed that they were selling their sanitizer at Newport Market. The market was selling it at cost, and I thought that was really such a fabulous, collaboration of our community to, try and help them out. So I just thought it was amazing. I got a personal call, and, and I did buy their product because I thought, you know what, they're local. We need to support them.
Yeah, I agree. And they also supported us and our companies with the sanitizer. It ended up being the sanitizer product was pretty well available with all of our, brewing companies and so on, but they were great. I struggled. I tried to work with them to figure out if there's a way to make it work for them that help the county and them, and it just didn't meet the terms and the real spirit of the incentive program. You can get there. So a full repayment of their $48,000 loan plus interest from the funding date, which is, as I mentioned, was mid 2018. So with 35 employees, they're below where they started in the program. The next company I'd like to talk about is Mazama Media. It was funded about the same time, on the same day actually, in mid-June of 2018 for $12,000. They were to add 6 employees on top of their 23 to start with to get to 29. And their average employment was to be about $45,000 a year. They did not achieve it at any time during the 1-year measurement window, unfortunately. I can't really describe their business in high amount of detail because it's pretty technical, but their marketing strategies and business model just didn't quite pan out, and it was confounded also by employee retention problems. It's been worse since COVID. They're down to 14 employees, and they started at 23 in the program, and they were to be to 29, so they're not even close. And again, they're doing okay. They're willing to repay it. They're signing up for it. There's no conflict there, but they're not going to gain a sufficient level of employment for a while. The last company I want to talk about is Cascade Integration Development. They were funded in August of 2018 for $10,000. And they are a engineering firm that makes it involved in large multi-year, multi-phase projects. The project that they're involved with in California, in the first phase, there was a shift in the phase requirements, and the employment they were supposed to be at, which was to add 5 on top of the starting 10 employees, just didn't happen. It's happening now, and they're flourishing, but the management there would just like to repay it. Just be done with it, and that's fine.
They want to repay it in full right now.
Repay it in full with interest for now, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and that one is relatively small. That loan is $10,000. They are actually, their measurement period ends in December of this year, so they aren't even at the end of their measurement period, but they just want to move on. So that really concludes my official formal thoughts. I'd like to enjoy your questions. And of course, Bill here probably has some thoughts on the financing, but that's all I have.
Thank you so much. Bill, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, I've been involved with this program since inception, the program back in 2010. And that was actually during our last economic downturn. And obviously, we had a different economy back then, and we're kind of dealing with some similar issues right now. As Don mentioned, we've seen very limited losses in this program over the past 10 years. And as a committee, we take very seriously the responsibility for stewardship of these public funds. And obviously, as part of our underwriting, we determine what the company's capacity for repayment in the event that they don't achieve the expected employment growth. So we do factor that in very seriously, and I think that has had a direct impact on the very limited losses that we've had in this program over the last 10 years. I will state, and I've got my banker hat on right now, that over the years this program has had a very positive impact on these companies and the local economy as well, as we've alluded to with the number of jobs that we've helped support and grow in the community, and also as a tool, as an economic development tool. As Roger can attest, we have limited tools in that toolbox to help promote and develop companies and also attract companies in from outside the area. And this is one of those tools that we are able to point to and utilize as needed with some of these companies. And I also, and I'm taking my banker hat off right now, by the same token, when we review these applications, we understand that this is not typical kind of bank qualified financing, that it's a different type of program, and certainly we're driving to a different type of result. And I think that's really important to note as well, is that this is an area that Deschutes County is able to generate some positive economic impact. And the committee takes the responsibility for overseeing this program very seriously. Overall, again, I want to support or provide my support as well as the committee's support for continuation of this program. And like I said, it is a very useful tool to promote economic growth in the area and support the companies that not only are already here and trying to grow in place, but also ones that we're trying to attract from outside the area as well. So again, we've over the years, we've looked at a lot of different companies. And I would also note too that we screen out those that we don't believe should be presented for approval. And so there's a screening process as well that we go through, and there's certain companies that just don't meet the basic program requirements. And again, the committee, Don in his role will be bringing those applications, continue to bring those applications to the committee, and we'll provide the oversight that we're required to do for successful implementation of the program. So anyway, I am very much in support of continuation of the program.
Definitely. I mean, when you see what's happened, we were just really happy that we could return the fees for the, restaurants, pools, hotels, 60% of their fees that they paid this last year, because we know part of our community has been so incredibly impacted with COVID. And, they have had to be one way and then they've got to be another. And, it's been a lot of hoops for our community. So this seems like a really important funding that we can do to help people bring more family wage jobs to Central Oregon. I think that's very, very important. I really hope to get away from that poverty with a view, and really, I love our view, but I really want people to be able to feed their family, and and of course now we're going to have more housing issues with the number of people that want to move here. So it's all it's a balancing act, but this program seems to be very helpful.
I had a question on these three particularly. Were any of these, was it used as a tool to get them here, or do you know which ones it was to get them here and which ones were already here and just wanted to expand?
I think at the time, all three of these companies were existing companies here. Yeah.
That's interesting. Because I'm real supportive of using it as a tool to get people here. And I when I first started as a commissioner, I was kind of reluctant about this program because it doesn't, we're not really bankers. But we got bankers overseeing this, which is good, and economic development. That's interesting that they were all here. It's interesting to me that these were all 2018. I think this, since I've been here, I think only one other company has not made it, or maybe one had to extend it. But so they were in a boom. We were in a boom back here when these were all expanding, and so they're all wanting to expand, and then they didn't. A couple of observations, you probably already made them. Two of the three, it was one customer that resulted in them not making it, according to your analysis. So that'd be something to look at in your evaluations, is what is their business model? Are they dependent on one customer? Because maybe those aren't the good bets. I don't know, maybe that's not true. And then the second one, the media one, it was interesting that I'm not sure why a media one doesn't really grow by an industry growth. That's kind of well, I think we can grow our business type thing, but then they say they can't retain people. That was kind of interesting, but I'm in favor of letting them pay it off. I don't think we should go down to 3%. For that, I mean, they entered it for the 8%. I'm okay with reducing it some, but I'm more in the 5% range, I think, so.
Mr. Nabone?
So, yeah, all three of these companies, it's a cycle. You can just see it. You know, they're all from this date, basically. You know, they were all aiming big at that point in time. 2018 is what I'm referring to here. When this works, it works very well. The jobs get created, and the annual compensation is there to show it. So it's a shame that they're all kind of coming together at this time. Yeah, interest rates are interesting. You know, as I say, looked like things were going to go up. Interest rates, you know, I had closed on a construction loan on a new house just a couple years ago, and it looked like we were trying to get done before they went up farther. And that's exactly what it was a couple years ago, and now they just crashed. So, I mean, we can discuss the rate. I do support bringing it down. I'm not opposed to 3%, so we'll figure out what we do here as a group. I do support it for all three of them. As I say, I know as a small business owner, my wife runs a company that her and I started. It's tricky, you know, it looks like you're growing, and then all of a sudden something might happen. You're going backwards a little bit, but hopefully these are all going concerns, and they can, you know, feed their families and create some payroll in our county. So as I say, I don't know how we want to confirm a rate here if it's a negotiation. As I say, I'm not opposed to 3 at all.
Okay. I'm like, okay, I thought 3, I don't know, would the bank loan money out at 3% unless, if you were a fabulous customer,
Long-term mortgage
probably.
it is right now.
Yes, if you were fabulous.
I will say that we talked a little bit about financial risk as well. And, you know, just, you know, an appropriate rate, certainly 8% seemed a little high, but, you know, just trying to arrive at a rate that appeared to be fair and equitable all the way around, and certainly not borrowing at Deschutes County's rate. So I think that we did have a dialogue at the committee level around that.
Yeah, I feel more comfortable with actually 5%. It was, you know, could have been a grant, you know, a gift, and because things changed, and apparently they're all saying it's really not COVID related. I feel like 5% is still really fair, and it isn't our money. We've loaned money from, you know, the people of Deschutes County, so I feel like dropping to 3 might be you know, a little too low. So.
And that's fine. I mean, as I say,
We're fine with that. We support that.
That's okay. Should we have an official vote on that?
Well, to the extent that you would use that 5% both for repayment of the 3 existing loans,
right,
as well as the new standard for loans to come to you. I don't know. Wasn't clear if that was part of your decision.
That's what they're suggesting. Also. I mean, that seems to be fair for today's economy. I realize that interest rates are really low, but I mean, as far as mortgages.
It's different between mortgages and businesses.
Right.
You know,
yeah, it is a business.
You can't get a business loan for the same price you get a mortgage loan. So Roger has something he wanted to ask.
Yes, Roger.
Maybe just a little bit of information on that point. Can you guys hear me through this now?
Can we? I think it's not really picking up very well.
But we can hear you.
Yes.
I don't know if the people watching can hear you, but we can hear you.
Just, you know, we did a little bit of survey on this from commercial banking rates today, and those are ranging for commercial loans kind of in that mid-3s range up into the low 4s for commercial loans for businesses. So SBA, I think it was in the briefing paper, those rates, depending upon the term, are anywhere from 2.2 to 2.5, 2.6 range currently. So the rates are quite low at the moment. And this is maybe something that the commission wants to adjust over time. So not set these rates forever, but you know, have a period of time where the rate interest rates are quite low. And so that's just more information for you to consider.
Yeah.
The commercial rates are, you know, in the 3s and 4s.
I personally don't mind being a little bit higher than the commercial banks, because I think we're maybe a friendlier process in some ways. I don't know. We hope. I think we are maybe, and I don't want to really use the federal rate because they're just deficit financing everything now. So they're not really spending money that that they have. I mean, it's just rampant, and that's where they've come lower because they're just doing that. So I don't really want to compete with them because we're not in that business. So I don't know.
So, and I mean, these are loans that are intended to be grants.
Yeah, we really want
Go
them to
forth and please make
Make it
confirm
work.
it's a grant, exactly.
Yes, we would love to have it be a grant.
So my point is, as long as there's an upside to it, that means we'll have resources to reinvest. So as I say, I would still advocate for 3, and if we could get to a 4, that'd be, better than 5 at this point. So as I say, I would advocate for that lower rate, empowering the companies that are working hard to be able to repay this and show the support.
So Commissioners, your action today, so it would be a motion to approve repayment agreements, county administrator signature on 3 repayment agreements at a 5% interest rate. And then we'll use the 5% for future loans coming to you, but since each one will be approved individually, you'll have another opportunity to have a discussion if you choose on the interest rate for each of those individual new loans.
Well, that seems to make a lot of sense. And, the interest rates are projected to be quite low for a while, but, you never know.
So I would move that we would approve administrator's signature of the 3 repayment loans at a rate of 5%, as discussed, and that we, for now, set the rate at 5% for future loan, grant loan program applications. So that's my motion.
Is there a second?
So I will not second it.
Okay, so the chair will second that motion. Any further discussion? No.
It's always interesting to hear what you're working on, so thank you for going through the details. And we had a good memo on it, so that's good.
It is a total of, the loan amount is, with the 3 is $70,000. So it won't be that much interest, because it's only a total of $70,000, but still. Anyway, Commissioner Henderson?
But yes.
And Commissioner DeBonne?
I'll vote yes.
And the chair votes yes.
So I just didn't want to second it.
Okay, I got to. All right. But thank you, Don, for joining us today. And we really look forward to the next companies, as soon as you can bring them back, because we really do need to help our community, bend and, survive in today's world. And, I heard the jobs number today for Deschutes County, it was actually going down even considerably more. So we,
Right.
yes, yes. It was, so let's see what we can do. And we look forward to seeing you in the near future.
We don't get Roger here very often. What can we ask a follow-up? Just because we're going to do our COVID update right next.
Yes.
What's been the impact? What are you seeing in new businesses? If you don't mind, kind of sharing a little bit for the general Edco.
Sure. Yeah, I'm happy. It
Portfolio.
sounds like I've got some sound now. Maybe.
Yeah.
Okay. Mixed bag, continues to be a mixed bag. We have companies that are even doubling where they were in sales last year, in 2019, and those that are 30-40% off from where they were the previous year. So it's a mixed bag, but I would say the vast majority of those companies are healthy and are going to survive this huge shock they've had. And your comment to new companies, BDC is coming up here next month. We are having an in-person with all the rules in place, BBC as well as virtual. We had 84 companies from 10 states apply, so we feel like there's a strong group of new startups coming, and it's not. It's not a new trend. When you have tough economic times, a lot of people say, "Well, I'm going to go start this business because I've got lower cost of capital, or I've got lower cost of employees and talent and so forth." So we haven't seen the formation of companies necessarily drop off a bunch. We have seen some of those companies that just weren't strong enough. They're too young to withstand, the shock, and some of them go out of business. So, for example, our portfolio of early stage companies we're working with across the Tri-County area, most of which of those are in Deschutes County, was at 100 in the last quarter, and this quarter it's it dropped to I think 85. So a little bit down, obviously, but I think there's more kind of filling the ranks for those. But more and more these days, it seems like for early stage companies, it's like, fail fast and then move on to the next thing if it's not going to work. Not have a zombie company out there. And I think that's exactly what this kind of an economic shock does, is those that maybe were struggling, go under, close up shop, and they go to start other things, or, kind of redeploy that capital elsewhere in the economy.
Roger, when you say BVC, at first, last time when I saw you, I thought you were saying BBC, and I'm thinking like, now what is British Broadcasting doing in Bend? So anyway, yes.
Don't help that, do they?
No, I know. Well, I just thought, wow, that's really interesting. We watch the BBC every once in a while, so, it's just similar sound.
I should say Bend Venture Conference instead.
Well,
There you go.
Well, it does, yeah, Bend Venture. So it's great. That's amazing. 84 companies. That should be a very interesting venue here in Bend. So thank you for being behind it.
When is that?
It's mid-month, 15th, 16th of October, and as it turns out, though, that it's 3 different tracks. You have a growth track, which is really companies that are looking to scale and ramp up. You have an impact track, which kind of has, they may have a triple bottom line, or there's some other social impact or environmental impact they're trying to create as well. And then you have the early stage companies, which are just trying to scratch out a new product or a base of revenue. And so, each of those tracks usually carry 4 to 5 companies. And so you won't see those 84 companies featured at BBC. You'll see the kind of finalists. But really high quality companies, we feel like, and compared to past years. And, I'll see if I can get these stats right off the cuff here, but we've had 48 companies since funding was provided from BBC back to 2007. Those companies have raised almost $680 million, go on to raise almost $680 million, and they've generated almost 1,400 jobs. And many of these companies were even pre-revenue. And so it's really had quite an impact. I think 21% or so were women-owned businesses, and 11% were minority-owned. So it's pretty interesting to see the data. When you've got a little bit of time to look over that. So pretty impactful. Again, not all those companies were located here in our region. There's ones from Seattle and Portland and other places, but a good share of them, I would say about half of those are here.
What was the minority percentage?
11%.
11, that's what I thought you said. Okay.
Great.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for that good news.
Yeah, with my background in as a software developer, worked with the Air Force and biotech career for a little while, and renewable energy interests. Commissioner Henderson and I have some background in that. This is the technology revolution time. We all cut over to video conferencing. Like all of society just said, okay, we're all using video conferencing starting today, and we're generally ready for it. The internet bandwidth, the horsepower at our desktops and in our hands with the phones. There is opportunities right now, and the triggers for those are happening. So, as I say, it's scary on one hand that the things are changing so fast. On the other hand, this is the exciting time for companies, startups, new revenue models. I've signed up. I'll be at the Bend Venture Conference. I always look forward to the Unconference, which is where the real wild ideas get thrown out there. So I don't know what that's going to look like this year, but I'm excited. As I say, the bright spot of this so much dynamic change is what's possible right now.
Well, if you want to get a precursor to what BBC, at least on the early stage companies, the pub talk happening on Thursday at McMinimans, and possibly also at the Tower, depending upon how many registrants we have.
Oh, okay.
I know, in person. You can choose to be in person.
Yes.
So, yes, great.
Or virtually. So
yeah.
Is that next Thursday?
This Thursday.
This Thursday.
Tomorrow.
Yes,
Tomorrow.
the 24th. Tomorrow is the 24th. I'm glad you used the word horsepower. That was very good.
There you go.
We are in Central Oregon, and we do have a lot of horses here. So thank you, Commissioner DeBone, for that proper term. Anyway, thank you so much for joining us today, and we look forward to seeing you back as soon as possible. Thank you. Thank you, Bill, for coming in and helping.
Yeah, thanks for the committee work on those
Yes.
evaluations for each company. That really helps us with the program.
Appreciate it. Okay.
Very much.
We're just going to take a 2-minute break for Whitney to set up our Facebook. So a 2-minute break. She has to say goodbye, and yes. Okay. Just 2 minutes or whatever it takes for Whitney. I think she'll probably let me go. Can I stand up? Yes. Thank you, Tom. We're up.
Oh, I get to read this week's quiz question. Let's see here.
Requesting for social security number. I don't know.
There you go.
I'm getting their PIN numbers for their bank accounts.
Yep.
Okay, are we up yet, Whitney? We're good? Okay, we are now live, and we're live with our Facebook, and I'll welcome Nahad to our comments and Dr. Fawcett in just a second. And I do want you to know that there are 3 wonderful gift cards for $15 each from Sisters Coffee for the winners of Nahad's contest today. So pay close attention. We do have 3 gift cards for the first 3 correct answers. So, Nahad, would you like to go ahead and pick it up? Is he there?
Yeah.
There he is.
Good morning. We just got access, so just allow me to share our screen. So, is the screen visible?
Yes, it is.
Wonderful. Great. Thank you for inviting us. I understand that we are live streaming right now. For the record, my name is Nahad Sadrazodi. I'm the Director of Public Health for Deschutes County Health Services. I have with me Dr. Richard Fawcett, our health officer, and I believe Dr. Conway is on Zoom. As always, many thanks to Jenny Faith for the usual great data analysis that went into this presentation. And also, as always, I would like to express my gratitude to our health services staff for their dedication, compassion, and meticulous work. I was hearing that there was, I think Commissioner DeBonne mentioned the quiz. You're welcome to read it out loud, Commissioner, or I can do it.
Sure, I'll do that real quick. I got to study it. So contact tracing of COVID-19 involves, and there's 4 choices and the answers. So A, letting people know they may have been exposed to COVID-19 and should monitor their health for signs and symptoms of COVID-19. B, helping people who may have been exposed to COVID-19 get tested. C, asking people to self-isolate if they have COVID-19 or self-quarantine if they are a close contact of someone with COVID-19. Or D, requesting for social security number in order to verify the patient. So then there's choices here.
Oh, great.
Right. The choices are 1, A only, 2, A and B only, 3, A, B, and C, and 4, all the above. So thank you for reading that out loud. And as Commissioner Adair kindly mentioned, there are 3 prizes for the 3 community members who put the correct answer in the comment box. And I believe our communications director, Whitney Hale, will kindly manage that for us. Just to start off, I'd like
to... Nahad, since you're doing these contests weekly now, if this was the radio, you'd have to announce the winners.
Yeah.
You'd have to come back this week and tell us who won last week. So if we're gonna do this,
I'm so concerned about HIPAA and everything. I didn't consider that, but that's a good point. I think we should do that. That's a good one. Thank you.
Yep.
Definitely. So to start off, I'd like to just let the community members know that we have a great website on our Deschutes County, Deschutes.org, where the community can refer to it and see a great visualization of our COVID-related data. And this is a great work of Whitney, Jenny, and Morgan, and our IT team. This first graph, in terms of the COVID update, is the cumulative numbers, which as of last evening stands at 787 cases and 12 deaths since March 11th. And as mentioned before, and commissioners, I'm sure you're fully aware of this, the flatter the line, the slower the rate of change. And the steeper the slope, for example, what we saw in July and what we have seen the last couple of weeks, the faster the rate of change. In terms of this, in the next slide, in terms of the number of new cases reported during the week of 13 to 19 September, we see that the new cases more than doubled compared to the previous week, from 20 to 45. This week, we have had 19 cases reported thus far. And I'll get into more details in the next slides, if you allow me.
One thing I like, Nahad, before on that one, I like that you've added the column about the 701 released from isolation, because that's nice to know kind of how that's progressing and how many people are kind of the weekly who we're still worrying about kind of thing. So that's good.
Thanks for mentioning that. Again, that was instigated by your good self and your questions from previous weeks. So thank you for that.
Yeah, I'm glad it's there. Thank you.
Nahad, I have a question about the college students that are here in Deschutes County now, but let's say they're not from here. Will they go in our COVID numbers?
So that's a really insightful question. Generally what happens, and it happened also with our firefighters in fighting the recent fires, as you may know, we get involved in terms of contact tracing investigation because we want to contain the virus. But at the end of the day, they get counted against their residents.
The permanent residents.
Correct.
Okay.
Now, there might be some nuances in terms of how colleges and universities manage residents, Commissioner, that I might not be aware of. But whatever the official residence is, that's where it gets counted against.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Great. And then again, just a very general, quick graph on, obviously, as the increase in new cases could affect the school metrics of weekly case rates per 100,000, which everyone obviously is closely watching. And it's less than or equal to 10 per 100,000 for K through 12 to return to school in some fashion, for example, hybrid or in person. And less than or equal to 30 per 100,000 is where some exceptions can be made for our K through third graders.
So, Nahad, we see the big uptick this last week, and this was kind of the scenario we were talking about, that we've had 3 weeks that we were meeting the metric, so we were really good, but then we have 1 week that's above, and it sounds like we may have another. But one of the things we discussed last week is, well, you could use, I think the comment was it was a strong argument that we should be able to reopen those 3 weeks, but this throws it really out of whack, doesn't it, when you go?
Yes, Commissioner. Yeah, that's a good point, and probably this week as well. Not probably, definitely, we're already seeing high case numbers, so it does basically put us back a bit, at least for K through 12. Yes, Commissioner.
One of the things, I don't know if we're going to talk about education elsewhere, but, people, I'm doing some interviews now and things for radio or TV or whatever, and they always ask, well, what do you expect to happen? Well, this could just go on like this for a while, right? I mean, we could go and we're down, and then we could come up the next week, and it really creates kind of a forever uncertainty in some ways, unless it goes away completely.
Yeah, to your point, since the virus is not really changing its characteristics, right? It's not really mutating at a high rate. So really what's happening is we have to focus on the host. So that's us as humans and our behaviors and the choices that we're making. So we are seeing clear patterns around some holiday events, for example, or some celebrations where we get together, we're not adhering to some of the precautionary measures, and those choices and behaviors definitely impact the way the virus then is transmitted. So I do agree with you that probably what we need to kind of understand and appreciate is that there are going to be these ups and downs as we move forward, but hopefully with our containment strategy, we can immediately jump on the virus, on the transmission, and contain it to the best of our ability, which is what we have been doing, and this is the county's strategy anyway. So moving forward, if you allow me, because I know we're going to get into lunchtime, or we already have.
Yes. Keep going, Nahad. You're doing well.
Thank you very much. So this is an important slide, and this is really following the discussions we had from last week. We went back to the last few weeks to see if the changes in positive tests we are seeing are a result of changes in volume of testing. So you may recall that conversation from last week, and it really prompted us to investigate further. So looking at the numbers over the last, let's say, past 6 or 7 weeks, we can see that the total amount of testing has remained relatively stable from week to week. And the number of positive tests is not really a function or reflection of the total number of tests collected that week. You can kindly see that some weeks the total testing volume goes up, but the number of positive tests go down. If the number of positive tests were perfectly correlated or associated to the total number of tests, then we would probably see that orange percent positivity stay flat from week to week.
It's
and
way
that
back.
is not the case.
Yes.
Yeah?
No, this
So I think-
this slide was actually quite a few pages back in our packet that you're at right now.
Yes, I had to send the slides early in order to get to your attention, and of course, between then and now, we made some adjustments. But correct, this slide is further down in the pack, and it does. And anyway, the key message here is that we really don't see a correlation between the positive tests and volume of testing. But I do appreciate the question being raised last week because it's helped us dive deeper into into those data.
So is there anything else, I mean, to go from 1% positivity to 4% in 1 week seems like a big jump to me. I mean, is it the nature of who got tested? There were more people that were actually sick, or was it,
We don't have evidence, Commissioner, on whether, for example, there's a shift in the pattern of testing. For example, we have suddenly more symptomatic or we're doing more asymptomatic, unless there is a clear outbreak like we had with the long-term care facilities. Otherwise, we haven't had that clear pattern emerge. So what ends up happening is that the virus is suddenly circulating, or not suddenly, it's cause and effect, right? We've had the socializations, the gatherings, the virus is transmitting. There is a symptomatic case. We get in touch with them. We identify a few contacts, and then we take it from there, and we do more testing and see that the numbers increase. So the total number of tests are not necessarily changing a whole lot from week to week, but the numerator does change, which then affects, obviously, the positivity rate.
wasn't about a third of the positives last week, though, related to one family or gathering or something? I mean, I remember getting an email that said something like that.
Yes, the 16 that were reported on Saturday were from a gathering that Morgan told us about.
I'm not sure if it's one family or multiple families in a social gathering. I have to get more information on that. Generally, what we see is, and it's something that I'm going to talk about in a minute, in fact, in terms of what's driving this, is sort of multiple households getting together and socializing. So certainly we've seen those patterns emerge. And to that point, if you allow me, really the question of what is driving the increase in case numbers, certainly one can consider that our choices and behaviors during the Labor Day holiday weekend have impacted the surge that we are seeing. What our contact tracers are telling us is that more than 1/3 of cases in September so far claim that they have had a recent trip. And this proportion is a jump from what we have seen in previous months. And in general, we see those traveling at a higher risk of acquiring and transmitting the virus. Now, let me please differentiate between a family of, say, 4 people, like my family, packing up their car and driving from Bend to the coast and camping out without too much interaction with others. Our risk of acquiring the virus is probably not very high versus, say, multiple households renting a cabin somewhere and either driving or flying there and spending time at a local business or bar for long duration with large numbers in smaller spaces together. Their risk of spreading the virus is most likely higher than it would be otherwise. So we have traveling and we have traveling. They're not all apples to apples, right? We have to appreciate those nuances. And I think it's not surprising, moving to the next slide, that we are seeing an uptick in unknown linkages, and this is scary. This is not good. We want to identify the case and the contacts and link them to a category, a cluster, an outbreak, a household, or something in order for us to contain it. If we're not able to identify the source of infection, it's much harder to contain the virus. And when a person has claimed a history of travel, then it's much harder to identify the source of infection during that travel, right, than it would be otherwise. So I think it's not surprising to see that we are seeing an increase, or we have seen an increase in September in terms of unknown linkages, or what we call our sporadic or community-acquired cases. We are still seeing a majority of the cases linked to clusters, outbreaks, close contacts, and household transmission. And in fact, to that point, and before I hand over to Dr. Fawcett, I'd like to share a quick story, if you allow me, because what our contact tracers are telling us also is that a number of clusters and outbreaks that we are seeing are associated with business settings. And I have to say that vast majority of businesses are COVID-19 compliant, and we thank them for that. And they've been really pioneers in this space, and we appreciate their proactive approach. What complicates, I think, this issue is that people might behave differently outside of work than they would when they're at work. For example, they may be socializing or not wearing masks when they are outside of the work setting. And the fact that a huge proportion of transmitters or those transmitting the virus are asymptomatic, or they're transmitting it before they show any symptoms, obviously complicates the situation. So here, a very quick story, which starts with a child care center in which 2 students, their parents, 4 staff, and members of their households all became sick in the span of 3 weeks. So really, we had a positive case among 1 or 2 parents, but we couldn't link them initially. And that's because the children who were actually transmitting the virus in this case were asymptomatic. So it's really an important point. So they were carriers and transmitting it. And eventually we had a teacher who tested positive because they were showing symptoms. So then we were able to kind of triangulate the data and link them to an outbreak. And one of these parents was working at a legal entity where they then passed the virus to 4 other or 6 other staff members and colleagues and what have you. So really, we're trying to help the community appreciate the linkages amongst various businesses and households and close contacts. So we're not necessarily immune from this virus if it's happening in a certain part of town or a certain business, where somehow are linked together based on degrees of separation.
Nahad,
so by the end, yes, Commissioner.
How many of these people ended up in the hospital?
None, and I asked because I knew you would ask me this question. So I asked our contact tracers, and none of them were hospitalized, thank God.
Well, I just talked to my mother yesterday. She's going to be 90. She's been in somewhat lockdown since March, and talking to her, it is so sad that people at the end of their life, I really just don't think that it's really good. I feel that just listening to the pain in her voice, this is really not working. This is not, I just want her to get out of there and like actually have a life, because she's sitting in a room and it's not mentally healthy. She needs to be out seeing, flowers blooming, whatever, the calves running around the ranch. I don't care what it is, but sitting in that little apartment is just not working. And
multiply it then by thousands.
Thousands of people are living that way, and that is not healthy for humans. I just think the dementia has got to be overwhelming.
Well, and today's the 6-month anniversary of the lockdown by the governor.
6 months.
6 months. And even in 1918, they didn't do anything nearly this long. They would shut things down for a few weeks or a couple of months, but
no, I mean, even if they could get together in in the home where she's living so that she could see other people, have communication at lunch. I honestly feel like it would be healthier, mentally much, much healthier. So anyway, it was just really it was heartbreaking yesterday talking to her. So
I can imagine, Commissioner, I share your sentiments. I have a 92-year-old father. I can see that this is draining him, and I can see he's getting even older at a faster rate because of this situation. So I definitely share those sentiments, and all the more reason that especially the younger age categories, younger folks in our community, we act, we behave, we make choices that are more responsible and towards the entire community so that we can bring this virus under containment and allow for more opening options in our communities and economy. No, I agree with you, Commissioner. Thanks for bringing that up. So, Commissioner, just to end this story, just to say that by the end of the 2 outbreaks in 2 different business settings, 19 people were infected. 2 businesses with 3 total locations had to close their doors for a time, lose business, lose money. And 56 contacts were monitored, each for 14 days. So enormous energy and effort by our contact tracing team to monitor these patients. So just to share this story about how fragile our system can be if we don't continue to make the right choices. So I'm going to pass the baton now to my colleague, Dr. Fawcett. Let me organize the video camera. Okay, Dr. Fawcett, you are up.
Okay. Hope you can hear me all right. Let me know if I'm not coming through. Thank you, Commissioners, for inviting me here with Nahad today. So I just wanted to be kind of brief with the next few slides. Some of this is formatted in a familiar way. So looking at data here regarding the epidemiology by age of patient, and looking in particular at September so far. This is the data up through yesterday. And the breakdown shows a similar trend in that we are overall seeing more cases in younger individuals compared to March and April. About 33% who were tested positive in September were under the age of 30. The other thing that is interesting too is to look at the very far right-hand column where we look at the percentage of Deschutes County residents that have been hospitalized with COVID-19 in the beginning, in the spring, fairly high percent, almost 30%, and that number has gone down quite a bit. So far, we've just had 3% hospitalized. I think today, I'll get into this, but I think we have 7 people in the hospital, and 5 of those 7 are not Deschutes County residents as of today. But I do think, looking at this graph too, the trend that we also see, besides sort of a general increase in the percentage of patients who are younger, but is that when we have less severely ill patients and less hospitalized, that we tend to have less overall patients who are elderly being affected. So, for instance, if we look at August we had about 30% of our cases were in patients over the age of 60, and there the percent of hospitalizations went up to 8%. So I sort of feel like, part of what we see is that we have more infections in more elderly patients than we seem to see more hospitalizations. That's probably intuitive, but I think our data bears out what we're seeing around the world, at least in the United States. Yeah, I'll just move on. So this, again, is looking at our testing week to week. Again, these are now tests that are defined by the date they're actually collected. So for this past week, some of the data is incomplete. It's getting better. We're not like where we were in July, where we had to wait sometimes a week or longer for the test result to come back. But for the week of September 13th and 19th, we had 47 positive tests, which is significantly higher than the week before. The total tests there, and again, I'm looking at the very far right-hand part of this graph, and the total tests
there, which is the darkly shaded column plus the lightly shaded column is 1,150 total. So doing the math there, it's about 4.1% for the last week that we have data on, 13th to 19th, which is, as Commissioner Henderson mentioned, significantly increased from about 1% or so the week before. So I think I'll move on. This is another one of the two school metrics, or one of the several school metrics. Probably, to me, the most meaningful number, I guess, would be the test positivity rate. And sort of the benchmark or the threshold is 5% for schools opening. We're still below that 5% even this past week at about 4.1%. So that's encouraging. But that rate of rise is a little bit disappointing, just looking, from the end of August to a couple of weeks ago to the data we have between the 13th and the 19th of September, 0.7% to 4.1%.
Dr. Fawcett,
Yes.
do you know the state's positivity rate for this last week?
I think around 6%.
Yeah, I haven't reviewed that, but Nahat tells me it's about 6%. I think.
So it was up to then.
Yeah, I don't know what the lowest at the state, because the state tends to be higher than we are in general.
Right.
Overall, and it's actually very fascinating to look at these little outbreaks. So there are counties that we never thought much about, like Union County out by La Grande, and Umatilla County has had.
That's where my family live, Dr. Fawcett.
Right.
Let's not pick on Umatilla County.
You haven't heard. Troublemakers.
Uh-oh. Yes, I don't know. Well, they have a lot of agriculture there. So
I don't know if that's
they have the best cantaloupe in the world. What can I say? Watermelon, cantaloupe. Yes, they raise a lot of really good crops.
I'm sure. So yeah, I don't know that we know the reasons why. We do know in terms of some of the outbreak. I mean, in the case of the Grand, there was a church where there was quite a bit of linkage to that church staying open. As you know, the seafood plant there on Newport. There's no examples. So I don't know the situation in Pendleton, Umatilla County necessarily, but in general, the places that I think have been hit pretty hard have been some of Portland Metro, mainly Multnomah County, and then of course Marion County around Salem has always been higher. But again, overall, we tend to be lower than the average in the state.
I think I calculated or counted it up on the maps they run in the paper, and I get it on my emails. We're 18th in the number of cases per 100,000 of the counties. So there's 17 that have a higher rate than we do.
And we're 9th when it comes to total cases. So we're 9th, and I think population-wise, aren't we 6th?
7th.
7th most populous, but we're 9th for most cases. So I check that every time I get that chart.
Yeah. That all kind of agrees that we're lower than the average probably overall in looking at the data all those different ways. In July, we're getting a little bit nervous, to be honest, but okay. So next slide there is looking at hospitalizations at St. Charles, Bend, primarily the Bend campus. For data that we have here, we were ranging 6 or 7 total cases in the hospital. Today, I think we have 7, whereas yesterday, I believe we had 6. Yesterday, the 6 hospitalized patients, only 3 of them were from Deschutes County. And then today, I'm told that we have 7, but only 2 of the 7 are Deschutes County residents right now. So although, looking at our Deschutes County data, that the percent of our positive tests from our county that are hospitalized has gone down, we still do have, at least sometimes more than half our patients in the hospital at any given time are outside of the county. So, that's important as well. Yeah, so just wanted to, Nahat and I talked a little bit about just the school year starting, and that it's a good time to remind ourselves about our kids' vaccination schedules as well as our own adult vaccination schedules. We have had exposures
to pertussis especially, but also to measles in the past couple of years. So it's always something to be thinking about. And I think as Nahad has mentioned before, I think is helpful is to get a perspective in that what we're going through right now in terms of the alterations in our business structure and increasing physical distancing, wearing masks, et cetera, that this pandemic is something like what it probably used to be when we had outbreaks of measles and, say, polio in the past. So vaccines have helped us a lot for sure. And next slide, picture Dr. Conway there, that influenza vaccines are available in most locations, including pharmacies. And just we need to get our shot soon. It's already time to get the flu shot. We want to avoid having a bad flu season at the same time that we have a number of surges in COVID cases as well. That would be difficult for our ICUs and our hospitals, of course. So I'll turn it back over to Nahad. Thank you, Nahad.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Fawcett. A great presentation. So as we wrap up and we fully acknowledge that we are definitely eating into your lunchtime, no pun intended. So let me just remind all of us, our community members, myself, my family, that during these times of crisis, the last thing we should do is compromise our Deschutes values, which, as I have observed over the course of the last few months, and of course there are others too, is that we stand united together as one community, one family. We're caring, we're kind to one another, and we're smart. We make smart choices that make sense for our community, for our businesses, for our children. Another key takeaway message is that holiday-associated activities, for example, traveling, does contribute to spread of COVID-19. So there's a cause and effect here. This is not just randomly happening. It's really dependent on our choices and behaviors. And that's a good thing, because then we know that if we modify our choices and behaviors, then we can affect the trajectory of this virus. Let's all unite and help our kiddos get back in school. We're almost there, at least for our K through 3 third graders. And we want all of them to go back to school, K through 12. And as Dr. Fawcett highlighted, back to school immunization and the flu vaccine, really important that we take it seriously this year as we have in the past, and we get vaccinated and protect ourselves so that we don't put undue stress on our healthcare system. So with that, I go back to the quiz of the week that Commissioner DeBonne kindly read out loud. And I don't know if Whitney has any update for us, but I'd be happy to announce the winners next week, or maybe one of the commissioners, you can announce the winners next week if you like.
Yes.
So thank you again for inviting us.
No, thank you so much for the presentation. Whitney, can we announce the winners? We should have 3. The first 3. What was the answer, Nahad?
So the answer is 3, of course.
You mean C?
A, B, and C.
Oh, 3, yes, 3. Okay.
Yeah, we definitely, this is just to mention that at no point would any of our contact tracers be asking for social security numbers, details of that nature, credit card number, none of that. So if that is happening, if anyone experiences it, please inform the public officials as soon as, or the public safety or equivalents as soon as possible.
Okay, wonderful. Whitney, do you want to announce the winners?
Yes, it looks like Bobby J. Nelson and Carol Oatman both correctly identified this week's answer. So congratulations to them.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Gosh. All right. So I believe it is time that we should adjourn. And is 30 minutes enough for lunch, or do you guys want 45?
I need to run somewhere, so maybe 45 would be better.
Okay. All right. So we will reconvene our meeting at 1:15, please. And yes, thank you very much. 1:15. To reconvene our afternoon session of the Deschutes County Board of Commissioners, September 23rd, 2020. And we now have item number 10, consideration of board signature for document number 2020-620. Chris Doty, are you available?
I'm here.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon, board. It's always a few tense moments between when you say my name and I get led into the meeting and whatnot.
I know you always have to, takes a while. And
Yep. So thank you for your patience. And good afternoon. Deschutes County maintains and operates 132 miles of road in the county, which also provide access to the Deschutes National Forest. Some of these roads are under the jurisdiction of the Forest Service, and the county and the Forest Service have a separate easement or maintenance agreement for those sections of road. But some are also general county roads, which provide access to roads that eventually provide access to the Forest Service. So the roads that we have separate maintenance agreements with are Cascade Lakes Highway, Paulina Lake Road, some of those recreational routes versus roads that just provide access to county developed areas that eventually lead to the forest. Before you is a cooperative forest road agreement with the Forest Service. The purpose of this agreement is to fully articulate the roads that are maintained by Deschutes County, and then consequently the roads that are maintained exclusively by the Forest Service in national forest areas. This is a renewal of our typical 5-year agreement that comes before the board every 5 years. Now, what's new in this agreement is some language with regards to the Federal Lands Access Program, which we tap into for maintenance dollars, specifically for those recreational type roads, the Cascade Lakes Highway, Paulina Lake Road, South Century, roads of that nature. We've asked the Forest Service in this agreement to include language which acknowledges their support or their willingness to consider support for our FLAP grant applications that we submit to the Federal Highway Association. And we've had some offline and heart-to-heart conversations with staff here locally regarding the importance of FLAP for our continued and sustainable maintenance of those types of roads, such that should we ever be denied FLAP funds or say chip seal of a Cascade Lakes Highway or something like that, and we'd probably want to revisit our maintenance agreement associated with that type of road. So they're aware of our, the importance of their supporting our FLAP applications, and did include a little bit of language with regards to considering that in the future within this agreement. So with that, board, do you have any questions?
I just noticed, Chris, this is Commissioner Adair, that China Hat Road is 44.8 miles in one spot, and it's 1 mile in another spot. So that seemed to be like the longest road that we're taking care of for them.
We maintain a 1 mile section of China Hat, and that's noted
the paved part.
A. And probably what you're referring to is the section on Schedule B, which is the piece that they exclusively maintain.
Okay, so we don't ever go down there?
Just the section of road from Knott Road to the south, past the golf course. That's what's maintained by the county, not the remainder piece of it that ultimately connects to Paulina Lake Road.
Because there's just federal land down
right
there. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I just was having a conversation yesterday, I believe it was, with Kevin Larkin, and because of the homeless population in that neighborhood,
right.
And apparently he wasn't sure of the count at this moment in time, and so that's not your problem, but that's something I was, aware of, and getting a lot of emails from constituents who live down in that area that are concerned.
I imagine so.
Yes. So we'll have to follow up on that at a different point.
Chris, when you're saying you've included the provisions about the FLAP, that's in the miscellaneous sections E and F?
That's correct.
Okay.
Very They can't outright say, hey, they're going to support everything we put in front of them. They acknowledge that they'll consider it, which they always do, and they always do support. And historically, we've had a great relationship in using their support to help leverage flat projects for the county. So they're not promising anything they haven't done in the past, and the same on our end. But at least we have had those conversations about long term, if FLAP changes directions in a manner that doesn't allow us to access those funds for maintenance dollars, that probably invites the conversation about maintenance on Cascade Lakes Highway, Polana Lake Road.
So the document I'm looking at has Patty spelled with a Y. So
it does, okay.
So do we need? Is it coming? It is coming from the Forest Service, right?
Correct. I would never make that mistake.
I know you would, Chris. I can count on you. Anyway, so I don't know if I just cross it out to sign it, but it is with an I.
Yeah, go ahead and just initial right over that Y.
Okay,
with an
when
I.
we sign it.
You bet.
Okay, all right. It's the little details.
One other question, are there other funds the Forest Service has or the federal government provides for these maintenance, or is FLAP the only pool of
FLAP
dollars?
is basically the only show in town. Yeah, if they had more funding, I think they'd maintain their roads probably to a better condition than they currently do. They're really strapped for cash, and you can tell what roads are in their maintenance purview. In the national forest, they could use more maintenance dollars.
So, I mean, it's almost, it's proactive on us as Deschutes County to have this agreement and have the capacity to apply and contract for those flat projects. As in the Forest Service isn't really even putting direction to that, it sounds like.
Correct. The Forest Service can't access flat funds. They can only support projects submitted by a local government. And,
my point is, would there be any other efforts to do road maintenance if Deschutes County wasn't basically promoting it?
There, in terms of what's on our system?
No, well, the Forest Service, the rural roads.
Yeah.
The federal roads.
Yeah, I mean, roads that are within the county's purview, we have access to those funds that they don't. And so it does benefit the Forest Service to have the county, maintain those segments.
Yeah.
The last time I drove on China Hat Road, my turn signal bulb came loose because it was so bumpy. So I'm glad we don't do those roads down there. It was really, really, really bumpy. So Commissioner Henderson, did you have anything else?
No, I'd move approval.
Okay.
Ready to move?
I think so.
I move to approve the Cooperative Forest Road Agreement 2020-620 with the United States Forest Service.
I'll second it.
Any further discussion?
Nope.
Commissioner Henderson?
I vote yes.
Commissioner DeBonne?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Thank you, Chris, for joining us.
Thank you, Board.
Great. I hear you're working on Harper Bridge, so.
As we speak.
Yes, good. Good idea. All right, we do now have the wildfire update, and the governor had started a press conference at 1. I'm hoping Nathan is available now. We're actually right on time for Nathan.
While we're waiting for him, do you know what the governor's goal was today, or why she had I didn't know she was having one, but I was wondering what it's about.
She quickly deferred to the head of the fire.
So it was about fires?
It was about fire and the fact that we actually have less deaths than they thought. They've taken down the morgue that the Oregon State Police had put up. We have, 9 deaths, I believe 5 missing, unless they've changed that number. And actually, someone I know knows the person who died in Vida that was 59. So, it's 9 deaths, but, I'm hopeful that the 5 missing will show up. And, it was a horrible September 7th. The start, I guess, September 7th started all that. So I see you there, Nathan.
Good afternoon, commissioners. I know that Ed Keith wanted to join us, but I believe he's has a meeting on helping put together a proposal for a next Joint Chiefs project, and so that's pretty dang important. So I offered to cover for him, and hopefully, I'll do that justice. Obviously, Ed's one of our local experts that I always lean on. So, but I'd be happy to answer any questions. And I'll just give you basically a general update. Is that for the most part, most of the large fires in the state have stayed somewhat consistent over the last few days. I think there's been some growth on some of the fires, but as far as large growth and runs, that has not occurred. It was a new fire over in the John Day country over north of Long Creek. I believe it's in the Ritter area that I don't have a size on that, but that was a new fire, but it looks like they were able to get some forward progress stopped on that. And
according to my Twitter feed, there were 3 last night at Ochakos. A couple of them were started by campfires. I mean, I think they got them all out, but there were 3. And I just talked to someone who had 1,700 animals at the Clackamas County Fairgrounds. So Nathan, just think of what you would have had to organize if, I told him, if in the future we could send them hay. So, but they had 1,700. Yeah. So that's a lot of animals.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think the new fires, that's a great point, Commissioner. Obviously, we are still in, let me pull up our ERCs for our area. We energy release component, which is one of the indices that fire managers track. We're still in the very high or extreme area rating for this area, which means that clearly we are still subject to significant fire behavior if a new start occurs. So we certainly want to encourage our community members and our visitors to be incredibly and very safe with fire. And frankly, at this point, probably not take part in campfires until probably more of a season ending or a stronger, better, cooler rain event occurs. We are looking forward to a little bit of precipitation over the next few days, which should moderate fire behavior here locally, but then return to more of a drier, warmer pattern next week. And I would say that I don't know that we're going to have enough precipitation to significantly moderate potential risk for fires in the next week or two. So looking at the outlook produced by the National Interagency Fire Center, it looks like we're going to stay above average through September and then look to return to more of a normal fire danger in October, which, as October, we get quite a bit of hunting activity in October, and we do periodically get fires in October from that kind of activity. So we want to encourage those that are recreating out in the forest lands to be safe, and then those of us in the communities to refrain from outdoor burning until it's safe to do so. And Oregon Department of Forestry and local fire districts approve outdoor burning. I think the other good news is with the increased precipitation on the west side, and I think our smoke. Obviously, we have better weather or better air today, and would anticipate that being the case in the future. Talking with Ed, it looks like the rain and the cooler, higher humidities over on those fires is certainly moderating the amount of smoke that's blowing into our area. That being said, we do occasionally get quite a bit of smoke from other areas, other regions. And so since California still has quite a few active fires, we could get some smoke in from that region as well. But I think what we saw last week and the really very poor air quality conditions, hopefully we won't see that again this year.
Nathan, speaking of that, we really, really need some N95s. We didn't have any last week here at the county office, and it would be really nice to have some. I believe we have an order through Home Depot, through 3M, but there were none to be found here.
I can deliver some. We have quite a few KN95s we had available for smoke. I'm sorry, I didn't know you ran out. I certainly can deliver some of those today.
Okay.
Over
Well,
there.
I didn't know we had any.
And those,
so where are they?
We don't have any.
But when have we?
Well, we were supposed to have some there on order.
Oh.
I mean, I noticed today we're at 105. Well, I was in the 600s and sisters.
Yeah.
So 105 is pretty delightful. And I think it's 151 that OSHA says not for you to be working in it. So, yeah, we were way over the chart for on and off 8 days.
yeah, I'll work with facilities and make sure those continue to be available if we do get poor air quality days.
Are those for staff then, or is that?
Well, because I was going outside a lot, and so I asked for one, and we didn't have any. So, and I know according to the TV shows and Dr. Conway speaking, this kind of a mask really isn't helpful.
Right. So is somebody here keeping those? I mean, we get them, where would they be?
Sarah was ordering them. Sarah Keys upstairs?
Facilities has KN95s. They may have run out of N95s, but it was my understanding that KN95s are pretty close to N95s in terms of their ability to filter
That's what
smoke.
we heard last week, I think.
Okay. Well, I didn't have any of it. I was having.
We'll make sure we have some available, and we also do have some available that we can deliver to the health department for public if needed as well.
So the KN95s are the ones that were distributed to the Chambers of Commerce, available for business. I went to an event in La Pine, I guess, and they're available. So it's like I have one in the console of my car, and I'm wearing these during the day. So yeah, the KN95s are available. They have been available, you know. But yeah, we can get them on the counter at the front office too.
Just as I've never known
Absolutely.
we had them or where we had them, or I don't know if we need to wear them in the building, but I was just, so we do have, the county somewhere has some.
Facilities, yeah, and they'll deliver them with a work order.
So
I'll touch base with facilities and make sure that they have what they need to meet the needs, and I'll handle that this afternoon.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Nathan, I think the last time I talked to you, you were either over in Eugene or you were headed there or something. How long did you stay, and I'm kind of curious what you saw or did over there to help with Lane County and the Holiday Farm fire, I guess.
Sure, absolutely. So we've had a number of staff. Obviously, the Sheriff's Office still has staff assisting Lane County Sheriff's Office. Haley Rich and from our office and our program over here in Emergency Services, Haley and I were over there all last week assisting with kind of that transitional phase of trying to get into a recovery phase and complete damage assessments and make sure those were available to Lane County residents, and also supported the setup of a multi-agency resource center for Lane County residents that did lose their homes or were significantly impacted by the fire. And then we've actually brought some of those lessons learned that we assisted with over there, and we're working over the next few days of interfacing with those evacuees that are displaced here in Central Oregon to assess their needs and what kind of services we can connect for them over in Lane or Marion or Lynn counties, where the majority of our evacuees are from.
I think I heard last night on the news that both the highway to Salem and Eugene are still closed. Did you go up into the areas between Vida and McKenzie Bridge at all, or?
Yeah, I did travel that corridor a couple different times, and I would say that it's first of all, it's just heartbreaking for the loss of those communities, not only for the lives and the homes, but also just I think it's fair to say that recovery is going to be a very long process, and we certainly want to support them through that and encourage that return to community that they had before the fire. It's quite a bit of very devastating damage, both to the built environment, homes and businesses, but also to the landscape. And as we were preparing last week, or assisting them, one of the issues that came up is we did have massive thunderstorms into that area, which the rain is good and helps moderate fire behavior and assist with suppression and containment efforts. But too much of a good thing can also be dangerous. And so we did work with Lane County, and they were able to map landslide risk and look at that. And there's a pretty significant process moving forward, not only to support the residential redevelopment, but also just taking care of and assessing the damage to stream banks and slopes and all the different impacts that fire could potentially have in the coming months to years. And so I think it's gonna, when you do get a chance to drive down that highway, and I think it's still going to be a while because of the number of trees that still need to be dealt with, and also just the damage to the infrastructures. But when you do get a chance to drive through there, I think it will all be saddened by the loss that those communities faced.
Thanks.
Channel 21 actually had someone, they were talking to a forester, and they were saying that the roots are going to keep burning. And then, we're going to have a problem with those trees falling over. So I just thought that was another complication of, you have to use such care when you walk back into, or drive back into that area, because, watch for falling trees. So,
yeah. Well, it's there's a number of hazards still very apparent in that area. But to your point, Commissioner, the trees, slope stability, rock fall on the highways and in communities, the ash pits and the duff and root system underneath the ground, but also just hazardous materials and recognizing that burned buildings are not the same as burned brush and trees and potential toxic substances in that. So it's going to be a very protracted process to even begin to clean up. And I think that is unfortunately one of the things that we had takeaways is, and I think we've seen this and we've heard this from Paradise and other events, but I think recognizing the length and the duration of that recovery is going to be immense, and that's something that will certainly be high on our mind as we complete our disaster recovery framework.
So Nathan, do you know, I realize that the FEMA individual funds is limited to $35,000 per house. So what if they have a huge bill for cleanup of what's left, the ash? Does the state pick that up?
It really depends on the debris removal plan that's put into place, and there's multiple layers that are involved in that. One is obviously local government, solid waste, and the local government's responsibilities to those community members, but also the state and state DEQ weigh in on that. I think there's voluntary organizations that can support debris removal. But I think the biggest challenge is going in and assessing those sites for safety before the debris removal actually occurs. And, if you have to say you have asbestos in a building, you have to clean that building up and abate that asbestos. Obviously, that's going to be a higher cost. And so those are discussions that they're having over there locally, and that, obviously if we had a similar loss, we would have to have. And those are some of the things that we're trying to address, again, in our recovery framework prior to a disaster, to assess some of those processes and who does and pays for what. But to your point is, yes, federal assistance is limited, and, there's a lot of little pots of funds and money that communities can draw from for recovery, from cleanup to redevelopment. And so it really takes a tremendous amount of case management by folks that are aware of the different resources and that can connect based on circumstances. So uninsured versus insured, types of hazardous materials at a site versus others. So there's not one single answer for each case.
Do you know, Nathan, I remember when we had that day-long seminar or event we had after Paradise out at the fairgrounds, one of the discussion points was about FEMA coming into the entire area. And is that happening in the McKenzie or San Am canyons, you know, of where they come in? And because I guess they then kind of control or take over what the regulations are and what you can do and everything like that. Is that, or is it just individual involvement at this point?
No, I think at this point, those communities are not even safe to occupy by those that would assess those debris removal. So FEMA is not, there's not a tremendous amount of FEMA resources on the ground. There was USAR teams in place last week searching for human remains, and assessing structures. But as far as assessing the debris removal and the damage, those assessments haven't even been able to be made because the area is still not safe to do that. Really, where FEMA's role in is if they are going to support financially the debris removal, there just has to be certain rules that are followed, and it's so yes, they will in some ways control or help manage that process. A lot of that is it's a relationship between local, state, and federal resources. So in some cases, you know, a federal agency might get a mission assignment to assist and handle the debris removal. In some cases, the Army Corps of Engineers have been tasked with that. And that's really going to be dependent upon kind of local input, state input, as well as resource available at the federal level.
I just saw the nicest story on Facebook at noon today that a community, I believe like Yamhill, had donated a new fire engine to Idana because they had lost their fire engine. So the whole community has come together and completely outfitted for that community. So, you know, Oregonians helping each other. And, you know, I'm sure that, you know, there are other spots that we're probably going to need to step up. So if you hear of something, please let us know. Since you're like right there on the ground, and if you see a need that we can help with, I think that's really important.
Yeah, I will certainly do that. And like I said, this is certainly an ultra marathon, and we'll have plenty of opportunities to assist as you know, this recovery effort continues.
Oh, great.
Good.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yep. Have a great day.
Thank you, Nathan. Thank you so much. Dr. Conway, did you want to join us now?
Good afternoon, Commissioners. You? So I'm going to just do a few quick updates. May I share my screen? Oh, I'm George Conway, Health Services Director. May I share the
Sure,
screen?
Please do.
So this is by way of keeping a promise from last week. You should see a colorful slide now. Do you?
Yes.
This is about the U.S. Air Quality Index. I didn't have this at my fingertips last, whenever it was, Wednesday. This is the Air Quality Index. These are what are called AQI, or Air Quality Index numbers. They're calculated by a complicated formula such that it exaggerates a bit to see the risk earlier, rather than just looking at the direct measurement of the concentration of PM2.5, the tiny but toxic particles in smoke and other air pollution. So basically, this is colorimetric, and green is good, yellow is moderate, and while it's not ideal, we've been in the most of Deschutes County has been in this moderate zone since last evening. It was in the green zone yesterday, and of course last week, for much of last week, much of the state was plunged into actually the upper bound of maroon, into an area above 500, which is called beyond index, because formula for calculating these inverts. So basically, green is that it's great air. Yellow should be adequate as it is today. I think it's, I just checked the Bend Pump Station surveillance point, which is the closest to here. It's 77, which isn't great, but it's not as good as it typically is in Central Oregon, but it's okay unless you're currently ill or you have a known sensitivity. Orange, once you see orange on any of the websites, and I'll show a reminder at the end of this, of those people with any sensitivity, asthmatic, underlying heart or lung disease, currently ill, should be very careful and should stay inside. Once we get into red, that really means that everybody should really limit their activity. And then purple is very, very unhealthy, and maroon is downright hazardous. There was a question a little while ago about N95s, and this is a sort of a tangent to that. Yesterday, OHA announced a program via local public health departments, health administrators, health officers, and tribal health departments that OHA is working with community-based organizations throughout Oregon to distribute N95 respirators to people who are least likely to have the option to work or live indoors during severe smoke events. So that includes outdoor workers such as farm workers. Hopefully firefighters and cleanup crews are already well equipped for this. People living closest to wildfire affected areas need to do anything outside or that are stuck living in a tent or whatever, and then people experiencing homelessness. And there's a substantial accommodation made for information in this. There's a palm-sized card that's distributed with them routinely in English and Spanish, but it's also available on request in Chinese, Korean, Tagalog, and Vietnamese. This is another loose end from last week. It was the fire fighting efforts were so busy, and maybe this wasn't the highest priority. I wanted to give you an update on our efforts at the interface between health and wildland firefighting. You probably know that all of the local health departments had arrangements and provided technical assistance to the wildlife firefighting clusters. So we've been providing broad COVID-19 policy development prior to wildfire season. There was a training that some of you may have been involved in, and then technical assistance during firefighting for containment. We've been notified of a total of 8 individuals working in 3 major fires in this part of the state reported as testing positive for SARS-CoV-2, which is the COVID-19 virus. These on our investigation included 2 clusters, one of which required following 20 crew with a total of 3 infections being detected, and the other just 6 crew, but with a high attack rate of 4 infections. The cases that were interviewed did report concerns about portable toilet hygiene, not necessarily having the best hand washing, that not being possible, as I think somebody mentioned, I don't know if it was Ed Keith or someone else last week, that the cleaning process may be difficult between each user, and then standing in food lines in a crowded environment, some people with maybe not ideal mask technique as being possible exposures. Only one of these positive cases would be reported as a county resident, but it's important for us to provide, and actually expected that we provide case consultation and monitoring, since they were quarantining and isolating here to protect our community from spread. And I'll just note that that's a very time-consuming enterprise. It's hard getting in touch with people, staying in touch with them, and it's also not reflected in our county's case numbers.
Dr. Conway, they had that huge fire camp at the Sisters Rodeo Grounds working on the Lion's Head. So there was, probably hundreds of people there.
Yes, just as there was during the Millie Fire in 2017. So this is a high-risk, hazardous environment. There are many different risks, and COVID just adds to those. So I'm impressed by how the fire management teams and the coordinators have embraced being as cautious as possible. and be quite responsive in trying to contain and manage this. And prior to deployments, planning, and then getting people out of harm's way when these such cases were detected. Great cooperation, I would say. And then if there aren't any other questions on this, this is just a reminder that while we have bad air, and we're hoping we're at the tail end of that, although the fire, as Sergeant Garibay mentioned, the fire season could easily extend well into October, so we have really persistent soaking rains or snows, and even then there'll probably be some undercover and beneath the surface fire continue after that. But certainly we're at risk of having bad air and flare-ups until mid-October, so for another few weeks up to a month. So if there's bad air, if you see the air quality index, which you can easily avail yourself of by going into our website, 3ws.deschutes.org/smoke. There's a series of links there that'll tell you what the current air quality is. If you are in that circumstance, we recommend that you stay indoors, only do necessary chores outside, and avoid them if you can. You can use a HEPA filter with a box fan or a MERV 13 filter, which are readily available at hardware home improvement. Staying hydrated is important to keep your mucous membranes functional. Shouldn't vacuum, burn candles, or fry or broil food, and then calling for medical assistance if you need it. That's all.
Thank you so very much, and I will repeat, it says don't vacuum, so I think we should keep that. That should stay around for a while, because who wants to vacuum? Not I.
Actually, if you have a gas, just to add, if you have a gas or a propane stove, those actually generate quite a few what we call volatile organic compounds, so you'd want to minimize using those while your house is shut up, and certainly anything with kerosene or like a gasoline lamp or whatever.
Well, Dr. Conway, I told you I use baking soda in my crock pot with full of water and left it on high for 12 hours in order to, I don't know, it was, I saw medical advice that said it was something to do. So anyway, that was my home remedy to get rid of the smoke, because I think I was in maroon for about 8 days. And Sisters, I think we were at the top of the world.
Sisters got really heavy smoke.
Yeah, it was unbelievable. So, well, thank you so much for joining us today with that information. Sure. Appreciate it, and thank you to Nathan again. Now we have our CARES funding. Greg, are you available? Oh, there he is. Oh my gosh.
Good afternoon, commissioners. Let me get this going here real quick. Here we go.
Yes.
Okay, so just want to give you a quick update on the status of the CRF funding. Last time we talked, I mentioned I would do this on a weekly basis. I was out last week, so this is the first time I've had a chance to do that. But in terms of history, the first original allocation, or the last allocation that you made based on the large spreadsheet, there was $218,000 in unallocated CRF dollars still available. That was on September 2nd. And then on September 8th, you approved an additional approximate $55,000. So right now we have about $163,000 that has not been allocated yet. All contracts, and this is a shout out to Dave Doyle, he's been super helpful in getting our contracts put in place. So all contracts except for one are put in place for those grant agreements. And we are now working with the individual providers to provide us with invoices so we can get that money flowing. I did speak with Scott Cooper at Neighbor Impact yesterday, and they're in the process of already in the process of distributing rental assistance, mortgage assistance, and they have their food truck on order. So they're moving down the road. Additionally, he will be, he's one of the major organizations that these dollars are flowing to, and he will be putting together an update every 2 weeks that I will share with you during these Wednesday updates. Just a couple of the, go ahead.
Greg, I was going to ask you about the warming shelter. I know we allocated funding for it. Do you know what it's actually costing?
I don't yet, but I expect I'll have that update from Scott soon.
Okay, you don't have it yet.
I don't have it yet. One quick note, we will be issuing economic assistance checks to restaurants, pools, coffee shops, and such that paid environmental health fees last year. Those checks will go out this week, and the total is about $550,000. So that'll be getting some money on the street soon.
That's going out this week. That's really fabulous.
Yep. James Wood and the accounting staff here have been working with health services. There's a total, I don't have the spreadsheet in front of me, and this isn't the total number of vendors, but these are the total line items. There's about 1,300 lines to distribute back to those vendors that paid environmental health fees. So of course, that doesn't mean there's 1,300 checks going out, but there's a fair amount of checks that are going to go out. So that'll happen this week by Friday. And one last point, I will be designing a snazzy update for you each week that will show you the running totals of what the commitments have been and how much we've been dispersed, how much has been dispersed against those commitments, and it will give you a running total so you can look back on it. I won't be surprised. In fact, I expect that there'll be additional dollars there to be distributed elsewhere in the near future. Any questions on that?
So do you have, I mean, you're going to do the updates every couple of weeks. Do you have a summary sheet that has each I think we've done 3 different allotments. Do you have something we could, I think you've given us parts of that as we've gone along. It'd be nice to kind of get that. I've been asked some questions about it, what we did with the money and how we did it and when and that sort of thing. So I can't remember off the top of my head all the time.
Yeah, I will provide you with that. That's the summary sheet that will show what the funding commitment was and how much has been spent to date versus what we had originally to distribute. So it'll be a nice way to keep track of things as we move forward. And my plan is to take a few minutes on each Wednesday to bring you up to date on anything. So some weeks there may not be anything, and some weeks there might be quite a bit.
I think it's really important to update us weekly. I know we have to spend that $162,000 approximate number by December 30th. So I feel like we should leave it right there at this moment because you never know what's going to happen in the next 7 days. So.
Yeah, I'm not in a hurry either to do it because we're still 3 months out, so.
Right.
We don't know what might come up. We probably should have more in reserve, but maybe they'll give us more. Who knows?
Exactly. I'm wondering, where our employees have all gone out to help the state where they needed to be, does that still come out of our budget? Does the state cover that? Is it a gift from Deschutes County?
I'm not sure what you're asking.
Okay, for people on the fire, like Nathan was working in Lane County, Haley was working in Lane County, are we still picking up 100% of their salary on our financials, or is it reimbursed by the state? Is it a gift from Deschutes County that a lot of our employees went over to help, the road department, et cetera, because they were all shorthanded?
Yeah, I believe we're reimbursed for that, but I don't know the details, but I will look into it and get back to you.
Commissioners, we have mutual aid agreements for emergency type services, including road, as well as sheriff's office that covers that or any other kind of emergency.
And how does that work? Does that mean the other county pays it and then they go to the state to get the money?
Yes.
I didn't know that either. I was wondering if it was gifted or.
Right, I know.
In some cases,
Nathan, look at that.
There he is. Hi, Nathan. Did you want to add something, Nathan?
Yeah, I was just going to point out, sorry, I was still on. And there's a couple different ways that can happen. One, we can just give them program, but fortunately, Deschutes County was included in the Presidential Declaration for Emergency Protective Measures. So in fact, I'm actually online right now working on submitting our request for assistance. So we should be able to submit that to FEMA for reimbursement on a 75%, so 75 cents on the dollar, but with additional volunteer efforts that have occurred in this county, we may be able to get that closer to 100% reimbursement. So we'll just have to work through that process.
Okay, thank you, Nathan, for letting us know the details. I appreciate that.
So,
Absolutely.
On a little bit another note for Nathan, and this will be kind of from the wildfire update. This will be an opportunity for some counties for us to be able to share our formula of Project Wildfire and fire-free days. I had mentioned that to some other commissioners and on a phone call, and there's probably going to be some interest out there. So I know that's Project Wildfire isn't led by Nathan here, but let's let Ed know. And just like, have we done that in the years past? As in, do we have like an introductory package about how to do your own Project Wildfire? And if we haven't, maybe it's time to do that, because it's a great tool. The education for the citizens, just basic defensible space, and fire-free as a exercise. So just that whole package, it's something we can offer. And it's, it doesn't have to be picked up today, but if we prepare, there's some counties that may really appreciate it.
Yes.
That's a great point.
And also the fact that I don't think everyone has our cell phone number with our emergency system. You really need to do that. It's really, really helpful. And I remember the little fire a couple years ago in Sisters on August 11th, in 2018, and you called a certain area. And I always think it's really best to call a bigger area so that more people know what's happening in their community. Particularly when we had the winds the other day and there were 75 miles an hour. That fire could have started anywhere, and those fires are so hard to stop. So that was part of the, catching people at night. So please get your phone numbers into our system. Think about it. Do you have a way to hear your phone at night? Do you have a landline? There's a lot of thought going on how, if we have an emergency at 2 a.m., are you going to know about it in time? Because that's what happened to some of those people. They didn't get notified. I know people in Detroit were not notified by anyone. Friends called them and told them to leave. And yes, their house did burn down, but they didn't lose their lives. So, Nathan, do you know how you call? Is it a 911 number, or do you call up the backup line in order to put your phone in the system? Or I know you can do it online too.
Yeah, the best thing to do is to go on to either, you can access it through the Deschutes County 911 site or the Sheriff's Office site, or we also have a standalone URL, which is www.deschutes.alerts.org, and it'll take you right to the registration page. If you do have trouble with that, you can call our office, or you can call not 911, don't call 911, but you can call the administrative office at 911, and between our office and 911 dispatch, we can certainly help walk people through and make sure that they are signed up in the system.
Great. Thank you so much for that. I think it's, you need to be prepared. Remember, you have to have your go bag by the door. And honestly, those people needed a go bag because they barely had time to get themselves in their vehicles and then to drive out of it, because there were trees falling and the roads weren't clear. And it was, what a frightening experience to live through that. At least they lived through it. That's a positive thing. So yes, get your numbers, and be organized. You want to have documents. They even say like medicine. So there's a lot of things to think about. What is it, and what is it you need to have in your go bag? So that's one thing I really liked about County College when we had that presentation. And they actually gave you a bag to fill. So it wasn't big enough, but it definitely was a good visualization on reminding people, just like carrying a shovel in your vehicle. In case of a fire, carry a shovel all summer. So little things like that to help keep the world a safer place. Thanks, Nathan. Did we have any more questions for Greg? Were we good, I think? All right. So now I believe we have the discussion on the Fair and Expo audit. I believe I see Dave in the room.
I think.
Give it to Whitney. This way.
Do we have an executive today?
Not that I'm aware of. I don't see anything.
Do we have any other items today?
So Commissioner Henderson, you mentioned investment advisory committee tomorrow.
Yeah.
I'd
ask if you could go. You've been on it. I was going to start, but I've got some other.
That's fine.
I should do instead, I think.
For Greg Munn's benefit, I'll attend that tomorrow, and I'll do that remotely if it's available. Is that what's going on, Greg?
I'm sure it is.
Yes.
Okay, yeah, so that'll be back to me. I'll attend it tomorrow.
Okay, would you like me to send you the Zoom instructions?
Yes, please.
Oh, please do.
Okay, I'll do that right now.
Thanks, Tom.
We'll talk about interest rates.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we got it.
Good. Thank you for joining us, Dave.
Oh, no problem. Happy to. So this audit, we've actually presented this particular presentation a couple times before. The Fair Board and the board, and Fair Association all met together and went through these findings. Plus the audit committee just recently. This report was issued in August. It is on the public website for the public to see. This audit came out of a discussion with the budget committee and prompted some discussion and questions from the commissioners, and resulted in this audit work. So the audit objectives, which that's okay. Audit objectives included reviewing and trend of accounting information for Fair and Expo, looking for variances and some changes that occurred. Those were probably the primary recommendation points. Next page. There you go. Okay, so one of the things that I have here is the county's CAFR, which is also on the public website. Digests and presents the actual counting information for Fair and Expo and the RV park. And it does so in a way that's, I think, is very useful because it's in an accrual basis presentation of the financial statements of the county. And by these specific departments are also on an accrual basis. It does show depreciation, it shows more of the true cost of operating the Fair and Expo. One of the things you'll see, and if you're following on the report, it's on page 3 of the report.
Is this the same report we saw at the joint meeting?
Yeah.
So we're just going through it again.
You don't have to.
Don't have to. I mean, you guys have seen this, I think, from there before, and I kind of went through it. When I asked about what you guys were interested in, I wasn't given a lot of direction other than maybe the same thing. But if this helps prompt maybe some questions, that's fine. Or I can just field questions, or I can do whatever you guys like.
I think I was misunderstood where I said I was wondering about the expenses for food and beverage, because I think per our April financial statements of 2020, it showed the expenses were at 92%. I think they were 91, and then they went up to 92%. And yet our revenue, what was it, like 55% or something?
55%
Yeah. And so I just wondered, and then you had said, like, there was beer that was spoiled, there were food that was bought for, I'm assuming, the High Desert Stampede, or was it the Sportsman that before everything kind of got closed down?
Sportsman was right that day.
Yeah, I think there's the Sportsman, and then there's some other things that we've done that were subsequent to the start of COVID that also where we I think had some food spoilage issues, but But I'd say the overall, let's say, profitability of food and beverage, particularly at Fair and Expo, had a lot of contributing factors. I'd say, there's food spoilage, which is an inventory kind of issue. There's some things with just looking at the cost margins. So when I looked at the cost margins, I talked about this a little bit in the report. The trending, let's say, cost of food as a percentage of revenue was like around 24%, but actually in this last year it was closer to 27%. We were budgeting only 18% for food. So again, there's some things where we needed to look stronger at how we were budgeting for costs for the food and beverage.
Well, was there a strategy to get rid of the food once we realized we were closed down for a while? Or when you say spoilage, does that mean it all was unused, or are you using kind of a technical, meaning we had to figure out ways to give it away or something? Or
Jeff can perhaps talk to this. I mean, I'd say talking to their food and beverage manager, they shut down pretty quickly, and I think there was a lot of stuff that by the time even I came over to do to help them with look at the inventory in June, there was a lot of things already past date, so.
I know, but we knew in March that we were closed down, so June's 3 months later. Yeah, maybe Jeff can say what you did about
just real
food.
quick. So, I mean, I'd like, the fair director, Jeff Hines, feel empowered to be very, very involved with this, because as I say, I feel bad that we're talking about an audit kind of separate than the fair. We're looking at the fair, but I mean, if we didn't find anything, materially, illegal or whatever, some really malicious things, we've just got to get on track here. So let's, invite the fair director, and is what I'm thinking.
Thank you, Jeff.
Which we're doing right now, yeah.
And Jeff, I want to just publicly say again how outstanding the rodeo was. I don't know how you pulled it all together. It was amazing. Roger Lee, who was here this morning with us from EDCO, attended with his entire family and said how thrilled they were to be there and the community, and just to put on that event. It was unbelievable. You did it, and you did it socially distanced, so thank you for all your efforts there.
Thank you. I appreciate that, and our team was very proud to be able to host that event over the past weekend in conjunction with 3 tremendous rodeo committees and 3 amazing stock contractors, all of whom were instrumental in doing it. So that was a true, and also with the support of the 3 of you and the rest of the county really made that happen. So that was a team effort by, I think, everyone. So thank you.
And don't forget divine intervention. The smoke cleared.
Yes, So
yes, our maroon left.
Everything came together very well for that event, and I think it was something that we're very proud of, and we can all be very proud of for quite some time. And then taking a step back on the audit, kind of a step back onto the initial question as far as the 92% food and beverage purchases. So in March of this year, we were preparing for 3 major events that were back to back to back. We had the Central Oregon Sportsman Show, which was scheduled to start the day that we had the immediate impact, the immediate shutdown on March 12th. That was immediately followed up by the Oregon State FFA Convention, which has a large catering component. And then that's followed up the following week or the week after that by the High Desert Stampede, which are 3 of our highest earning events back to back in the month of March. And so there was a large pre-purchase order made in preparation for those events. For the Central Oregon Sportsman Show, obviously with a significant food and beverage earnings, we have to pre-purchase that food in order to do so, some of which was cooked and prepared and with an event that was scheduled to open within 3 to 4 hours. So there was some destruction and spoilage of some pre-prepared food that had no ability to be salvaged, and some items that had been defrosted in preparation for that weekend. We did have the pre-purchase of items for the state FFA convention, including some pizza items at their request that we currently have in our inventory. So we've been able to hold some of that off, although some of those items do have expiration or spoilage dates, and also preparation for alcohol combined order for Sportsman Show and High Desert Stampede was placed so that we could have an excess amount on site for sportsmen so that we would not run out. That would then be planned to be utilized for the Stampede, which has been the traditional practice. Also on that side, what we did is we went back and looked at a trend report of our purchases for prior years over the last 5 years and identified that we were continuing the same purchasing processes over those last 5 years. So we're actually on trend with those prior years, although it may be something that we can identify to streamline so that we don't have these this excess inventory for future events in the unlikely event that something like this occurs. Is this was certainly a case where we had pre-prepared and were ready for what was three of our largest non-fair activities that were coming up in sequence, where we need to work on having an exit strategy in the unlikely event that things don't happen, I believe.
So just maybe any exit strategy. This probably has never happened before. I think the thing that got me kind of like what Commissioner Dare was that it seemed like we knew in March, and it didn't seem like you'd have bought 92% of your food and beverage by March, but maybe you do. Is what it sounds like you're saying you buy quite a bit of it by March. So that was, I guess, as we watched the monthly budget. So that's interesting. So were we able to give anything away? Did you? Just kind of curious. Were you able to give things away to people, or do anything or does any of it really spoil?
So there is some spoilage in some of the items that we had. We made the attempts to provide to groups in our community, nonprofit groups that provide feed or feed the needs of those that are less fortunate. And we were able to do some of that with some of the items that were spoiled, although there were some that just were not salvageable because they were either pre-defrosted or pre-prepared that just don't meet the guidelines.
I know in April of 2019, I was there for a seminar with the CDC Legal, and they had like 30 lunches or maybe 40 lunches they brought out for us, and there weren't that many people. And the good news was we were able to get those extra lunches out to the community. I think we had to, really work to find out who would actually accept those, but they were just made that day. And so we, it was great because we could share them with people that needed a lunch. So, yeah.
Where possible, where anything was within the use date, we made every attempt to provide it to an organization that had a use or a need for it, and that was our goal. And I know there was a number of attempts. I could provide you the list of those that we were able to provide it. I don't have that off the top of my head today, though.
Okay.
So, you get something?
Just real quick, yeah. I mean, so we're talking about that 92% number, but we're at 75% of the year. January, February, March is the third quarter of a fiscal year. So and then you're setting up for a big event. So my point is, it sounds like it kind of proportionately generally works, and then this is the one of the audit recommendations is to do have a calendar set of numbers, even if we don't do have a fiscal year, a calendar set of numbers. So because you do think of it as kind of winter events, summer events, and then fall events at the fairgrounds. And the fiscal year doesn't really jive with the annual year of events at the fairgrounds.
So I like that recommendation. I hope that we're working on that to keep the books both. I mean, one's the official books, but the other one's good if you want to compare one year to the other. One of the questions that came out of the presentation at the fairgrounds was, it was brought up that money had been being set aside for several years for our 100th fair, but it wasn't really, it was all spent in that 1 year. And I was just curious, I don't know, David, if you found that to be true, that money had been set aside somewhere, or, because again, I had never heard that was a proposal by somebody, but I've heard since that people talked about it, but we didn't talk about it that I remember. So I was just kind of curious if either of you know anything about that. Was there an extra 100,000 set aside that in an account, or was it just talked about? I never quite understood that.
Well, I think it's very transparent in the budget that the funds that are for the fair are in the fair fund, and it's very clear when money's moved and how it's moved. And so again, I think there's been good transparency in that. There might have been some miscommunication with people who are volunteers and stuff about how stuff is done. I think there was every effort to make the 100th fair a special fair. There was extra budget set aside for special events and things like that. So, and, you know, in terms of what we looked at, that was very much what I saw. We just had some overruns in a couple categories, but overall the fair was a profitable fair, and when you look at it on a 12-month calendar basis. And so again, I understand what they said, but I didn't see any indication that there was any kind of a extra side account for certain things.
Yeah, it was profitable, but it underperformed our expectations by 150,000 or something what would have been budgeted. So that was the issue. Did you ever, the other thing that I'd pointed out in the line item budgets that we'd had, that there were certain categories that there'd been nothing budgeted, but there'd been a lot of money spent on them. There was also the other somewhat, but more dominated by the first. Did you ever figure out kind of what that was about?
Well, I delved into a lot of those categories, and that was one of the recommendations, was that we could do a better job at Fair and Expo doing more line item detail. And I think Jeff has already been doing that. He's been, instead of lumping things where they were before, he's been breaking things out. And so I think, you know, I give him credit for that. I mean, I think that's a change. And so when people look at line item from before and line item after, it kind of confuses things. But I'd say he's making efforts to try to put things in the right categories now. So
they'll match.
I did see that. So, yeah.
At least maybe not to, you know, look at the past, but at least looking future. I mean, I think that's much wiser, honestly, and doing that calendar, you know, calendar financial, and then, of course, we have to have the fiscal year, but the calendar financial, I think, should really help the whole operations. And yes, you know, please get a rodeo budget so that we, you know, it's you know, it's a budget, and they know what to go by. So I think that will really help the whole community.
It's kind of independent from the audit, but it's kind of brought up at the same time as this renegotiation or redrafting of an agreement between, was it the Fair Board and the Fair and Rodeo Association? But it's never really been explained to us what the current agreement is and what's wrong with it. I don't need to do it today, but I'd like to do it sometime before you go to a lot of work and redefine all this. I'd like to hear a little more, because now, one thing I got out of the rodeo, besides having a great time, was getting to meet some of the different partners and people we work with and see it all kind of in action. And I was just thinking, it made me think a lot about these things and the different associations. So it'd be interesting to hear some detail about what the current agreement is, what is wanting to be changed.
Isn't the old agreement from like 2004, I believe? It's from quite a while, or maybe
I think
2000.
It's when it first opened, I think.
Yeah, maybe
when
2000.
The new fairgrounds went in, yeah.
So, but I do have to comment that, like saying what you were, I met the man who worked on the arena, and Jeff asked him, or maybe Dennis Fast asked him, couldn't we put your sign up, because he worked so hard on getting that arena just tweaked and, you know, in much better condition. It needed it, and he said no. He goes, I just want to give back to Deschutes County, and that made me so proud. That's why we live here, and just all the community coming together and doing what they did. I know you guys, I know your team worked so hard. So, but just hearing that from someone on a tractor with his little electric eyes was really that was really an amazing feeling. So it's wonderful to see that people give back in, you know, ways that you can never imagine.
But I think that, you know, the extent that the fair and expo center and our budget, you know, we were able to put this on without charging significant rent and things like that, was a way to give the whole county, kind of gives back to that whole, the whole rodeo world in a way, because I think all three rodeos kind of benefited. the people participating benefited, and then the people that went benefited. It was good to have a nice event like that, so.
Yes, something
Positive, very positive.
Yes, very positive. So, good.
Thanks.
And we'll maybe
Well,
get to some of them later.
So I'd say I'm very motivated to help, as a Board of Commissioner member, just kind of help the lay of the land and moving forward in the discussion between the Fair Association, the Fair Board, and, what is leadership or what does the org chart look like, I guess, so it's kind of up in the air right now. We've got to get it landed. And we'll do it here in the near future. I know that's the Fair Association's task, is kind of figure out the clarity on what they're looking for. Fair Board. So this is a generational thing. We haven't done this in 20 years. Kind of renegotiated the setup, and then with you as a director. So I'm here to help.
David, like what you were saying, were you extrapolating that perhaps we should be charging more for our food because the food costs were going up higher? Is that what you were, the bottom line of your comment about up to, what is it, you said up to 28% or something?
It's just looking at the way they budget
They're budgeting 18, but it's much higher.
the costs were running higher than what they were budgeting. And so again, looking at the mix of things, and again, I talked to the food beverage manager about that, and he was going to reevaluate his pricing and look at his costs again, and again, help them rethink some of their mix of cost versus the revenue on their food and beverage stuff. So,
okay.
I think that's helpful, but yeah, that's what I was getting at.
Okay, yes, I get it now. We were only budgeting 18, but really, I know that everything I'm going to recently has all been going up, like $1 or, if you can find it, it's gotten more expensive. So definitely we're going to have to do that when things start booking up again.
Were there other things that you had? We kind of took it off the presentation mode, but were there some other main points you wanted to, after what we'd gone over at the fairgrounds?
I think you hit some of the main points. We talked a little bit about the Fair Association agreement to kind of set the stage for better organization. I think that was in there. The recommendations on the expenditures get a little detailed, but probably the other one I think was important was just setting up the Fair and Expo with proper operating funds for contingency and working capital, so that they can weather some of these events or these things, either in the fair fund or in their operating fund. So again, I think that's something that you look at next time you do the budget. But that's something definitely to bear in mind.
I know I just saw where the Sisters Rodeo was allocated $32,798 from CARES funding through the culture. But I didn't see High Desert on that. So they didn't get anything. How these groups are going to be able to survive in all that they do for their communities. So it's going to be, it's always challenging, and this has probably been the biggest challenge in a while, don't you think, Dave?
Yeah, since I've been at the county, this has been the biggest event.
Well, remember, we had all the snow in November, so I don't know if those people used food, but that got shut down because of our snow then. So it has been, it's been challenging.
It's definitely been an interesting first year here in Deschutes County, but on behalf of myself, and then certainly the Fair and Expo board, and Aaron Curtis from our board joined us today, and we're certainly appreciative of the support that the commissioners and the budget committee and the entire county has provided to us to be able to continue to move forward and weather this storm and be well prepared to provide a first-class venue to the citizens of Deschutes County for whatever the needs are. I think as you talked about the wildfire response last week, that's one of our highest and best uses, and certainly the pre-planning that went into the development of this facility has allowed us to be able to do items like that and be prepared to do that, and we're committed to making sure that the facility stays in first class at all times. whether it's for a televised rodeo or a disaster response. We want to make sure that we're always ready to be able to provide the appropriate need or desire whenever that comes.
I don't know if you heard me earlier, Jeff, when I heard that there were 1,700 animals at the Clackamas County Fair. We would have needed all 10 ton of hay that one of our residents had donated or talked about doing. So yeah, 1,700 animals feeding, and that would have been a huge job. And could we have handled that kind of a capacity, I wonder?
I believe we probably could have, and I'm glad we didn't this time. We certainly provided some assistance, but not to the degree that many of our fair family partners did throughout the state. I'm not sure there was a single fair that didn't step up and provide some level of support to either their community or others, whether it's through donations, supplies, or equipment that were utilized on their property or other properties throughout the state. But also, in addition to that, we had a tremendous outpouring of support from this community and surrounding communities that allowed us to be able to do that through feed, through donations like you mentioned, tremendous amount of support from businesses and individuals here locally to fill the needs we had, to where we actually had excess capacity to be able to provide that to other venues like ours in other areas as well, which I would have to go back, but probably included Clackamas and some of those others in other areas, and that need will continue for quite some time at some of those areas, as I think Nathan and you talked about earlier. It's not, some of those needs are not short-lived; they'll be long-standing, and I think fairs will continue to assist. And we've always been strong community partners as an industry, especially here in Oregon, and will continue to do so. A part of that is the support of our community that helps us help them.
It reminds me of when I had to take my animals, and I had my TV on, and there was my horse, Chocolate Mousse, on television. I just remember that, and it was like, I went like, oh my, and yeah, so I think I was interviewed by Lester Holt, and he wanted to know how many horses I had. And I said I couldn't say because my husband could be listening, because he was always counting how many horses. Like, don't you do that at your house? Count the horses out there.
We had one pass away, and we gave one away. So we
you
were
did?
down to a couple years ago.
Oh.
All of a sudden, all 4 stalls were filled again.
Oh.
How does that happen?
I don't know. Don't ask me. Yeah,
Like
no.
magic.
No, that was like such a funny memory, though, to remember that. There he was. Chocolate Mousse was a very special horse. Still miss him. So anyway, well, thank you for joining us today, Jeff, and thanks, Dave, for coming in and going over the audit. I think it's always good.
Yeah, one more question. So is there any other follow-up items from this audit? Is it a discussion item at the audit committee? Like from management's point of view, the official?
Yeah, there were some recommendations, and those have been set up for follow-up in 9 months. So I forget when that was, or it'll be like April, May of next year. We'll do a formal follow-up.
Yep. So it'll be kind of on the agenda of the audit committee, and it'll be a published follow-up report,
Correct.
which we've seen in the past. So great. Thank you very much.
That's what's so good about what Dave does. He picks out things, or the group does, and then we actually make sure that they are implemented. And people can't implement them, like immediately, but just like that agreement really needs to be touched again. And it'll be
say that that's a report that comes back in 9 months on implementation. Implementation has already begun.
Yeah.
They're well on their way on almost all of them.
Oh, great. Excellent. So, sounds great. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
Do we have any other items?
I'm not bringing anything today.
Are you okay?
Yep, I'm okay.
Okay, and I just want to make note that I did call Colleen Thomas. I'm worried about the homeless count in China Hat, and I'm hoping to talk to her about that.
Well, I did get a call earlier today. Somebody's kind of upset about people setting the camper up, just on the parcels in the rural, private parcels and public parcels. So that's happening all over the place. And it's for the benefit of the people that are even doing that to understand that we go from summertime in September to cold weather in October to winter, and it is not if you're not ready for that, it's not a good situation.
And don't forget, last year we had that horrible freeze in September.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah.
And we've had, 6-8 inches of snow during a snow event in October. It might go away, but it happens sometimes in October.
Okay. So, and we have no executive today. So, and you had nothing today, Tom? Okay, so we are going to now adjourn our meeting. Whitney, thank you very much for joining us. I hope you were one of the 2 lucky winners of the Sisters Coffee gift certificates.
It's hard work. It's not just luck.
Yes, well,